Chapter 974. As the war drums rumbled, another bustling scene was taking place at the ends of the earth. Towering skyquaking giants were gathered together, and between them were 8 massive bronze catapults. Each of these bronze catapults was 50 to 60 meters tall. They were sturdy and heavy, weighing at least 60 to 70,000 pounds. Release! 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 In front of the 8 bronze catapults, the commander of the skyquaking army furiously bellowed out orders. Thunderous booms rang out as one skyquaking giant after another was fired like cannonballs. Damn it! You useless things, you can't even do something as simple as this. A furious roar of the heaven-shaking step came from the side, and then a massive muscular hand like the roots of an old tree reached out and pushed the powerful skyquaking giant commander to the side. In front of this massive hand, the powerful skyquaking giant commander seemed too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. All the busy skyquaking giants around him fell silent out of fear, obediently lowering their heads and standing to the side like children who had made a mistake. Rumble! It was at this moment that a gigantic foot stomped down from the side. Dirt and stones flew everywhere, and the ground shook violently as if it were about to split open. Leader! The surrounding giants didn't even dare to breathe too loudly, their heads hanging down to their waists. They appeared both respectful and fearful. Bang! After a series of loud footsteps, the owner of that palm finally appeared in front of everyone. This was a giant 27 or 28 meters tall, his body extremely muscular. His arms were as thick as the thighs of the other giants, and the strength surging through his body far surpassed that of any other giant. In front of this giant, the other giants truly were like children. Garib Hassam, the commander of the skyquaking army. In Arabic, this name represented victory and invincibility. He was an undefeatable giant, and the Caliph of the Arabian Empire called him the Wrath of God. Garib Hassam was different from the other giants. Despite his massive size, he was extremely intelligent. More importantly, before Garib Hassam had participated in the giant army experiments, he had been an extremely outstanding Arab general. His loyalty to the Caliph and his extraordinary talent for battle had made him deeply respected in the Arabian Empire. The Caliph had even forged a golden belt for him to symbolize his status as the commander of the skyquaking army. However, at that moment, Garib Hassam was extremely furious. Useless thing! Trash! 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 Garib Hassam kept cursing. He had long ago made an agreement with the Arab army. If the giants of the skyquaking army succeeded in their objective, disrupting the Tang dynasty's defense line and destroying the 2 giant ballistae, the Arab army would send a signal. But now, more than 200 skyquaking giants had been launched by the bronze catapults, and yet there was still no signal. It was clear that the 2 giant ballistae had not been destroyed. To the conceited and arrogant Garib Hassam, this was a disgrace. Hussein Tilak, just what are you 2 bastards doing? Why haven't you been able to hit those 2 giant ballistae after so many times? Can't you do something as simple as this? Garib Hassam was extremely tall, his height of 27 or 28 meters, allowing him to clearly see what was going on in the distance and where the 2 giant ballistae were. Garib Hassam found it intolerable that so many catapults had failed to hit the 2 giant ballistae. Leader, the bronze catapults have very poor accuracy. We've already done our best to accurately hit the 2 defense lines. It's basically impossible for us to accurately hit those 2 giant ballistae. One of them, a 22-meter-tall giant called Hussein by Garib Hassam, defended himself. Boom! Just as the giant finished speaking, what welcomed him was a heavy iron fist. The enormous power sent him flying into the air. Useless thing, get out of my way. I'll tell you right now that there's nothing in this world that can't be done. A bunch of trash. Garib Hassam pushed aside the 2 commanders and sat down on one of the bronze catapults. His eyes were fixed forward as he began to personally adjust the direction. 2 more giants, pull the bowstrings. Increase the strength. Increase the load to the maximum. This time, none of you are allowed to move. I'll adjust the direction myself. Garib Hassam roared as he took the lead. 30 zhang, 50 zhang. Garib Hassam commanded the skyquaking giants to pull the bowstrings back. The two tough and flexible bowstrings slowly tightened, creaking as they approached their limits. Release! After an unknown period of time, when the heavy bronze catapult string finally reached its limit under the pull of a dozen tall giants, Garib Hassam gave the order to fire without hesitation. Rumble! With an earth-shattering rumble, Garib Hassam, along with the tens of thousands of tons of airflow around him, shot into the sky like a cannonball. With a speed much faster than any previous launch, he shot into the sky and quickly disappeared into the depths of the sky. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. It was only at this moment that a deafening rumble came from the void. In the distance, as the skyquaking army was slowly being hindered, and their assault was in a stalemate, the sound of a falling meteor came from overhead. This time, it was much louder and sharper than any of the previous times. The screech of the meteor as it scraped against the air was so sharp that it almost tore the eardrums of everyone on the battlefield. Wang Chang's heart thumped as an extreme sense of danger welled up in his mind. He could sense that a massive meteor was descending from the heavens with unprecedented speed. Compared to this meteor, the speed at which the skyquaking giants were descending seemed insignificant, like a turtle trying to catch up to a rabbit. Bzz. Wang Chang's eyes scanned the sky, and with a single glance, Wang Chang locked onto the source of that shrill screech. It was a golden red meteor, nearly 3 times the size of the other meteors, and it was falling with incredible speed. From the moment Wang Chang heard the screech to when he raised his head to lock onto the meteor, it was already less than 100 zhang from the defense line. At this distance, everyone could feel a strong visual impact and pressure. More importantly, everyone could feel a vast destructive power from this huge golden red meteorite. Not good. When he saw where the golden red meteor was going to land, Wang Chang's body trembled and his face paled. Lord Protector General, I leave this to you. Wang Chang roared as he charged toward the 2 giant ballistae. My lord. But the moment Wang Chang turned, he heard a panicked voice from behind him. Shui Qianli looked at Wang Chang in panic. At the same time, Cheng Qianli's panicked voice exploded in his ear. Everyone get ready. Wang Chang's heart trembled, and before he could react, he could hear the rumbling of heavy footsteps that had suddenly sped up. Wang Chang grimaced and turned his head. A moment later, he saw that the mountainous behemoth was speeding toward the defense line. It was less than 200 zhang from the defense line. Wang Chang grimaced as he finally understood why Shui Qianli had called out to him, and why Cheng Qianli's voice was tinged with danger. The Arabs had actually accelerated their attacks and launched an all-out assault. In front of them were the 4 terrifying behemoths and the Arab army, and behind them were the King of Giants and the Skyquaking army. The 100,000 Tang dynasty reinforcements were in an unprecedented perilous situation. Wang Chang's footsteps came to a screeching halt as he found it difficult to advance or retreat. Banahan! In the blink of an eye, Wang Chang only had time to call out one person's name. However, this small delay was enough to determine the outcome of the golden red meteorite in the sky. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking explosion as the golden red meteor smashed into one of the giant ballistae. The massive impact instantly pulverized the giant ballista into countless parts and sent the surrounding ballista soldiers flying like they were made of paper. Ha ha ha, burn for me! A frenzied laughter, brimming with the desire to destroy, came from the center of the explosion. At the same time, a terrifying burst of stellar energy exploded a second time, sending the surrounding ballista parts, rocks, dirt, and even the surrounding ballista soldiers flying even further away. In the thick cloud of dust and the shockwaves of the explosion, everyone could clearly see a massive skyquaking giant rising from where the giant ballista had been, its 27-meter-tall body leaving everyone deeply stunned. Burn to ashes for me. While everyone was reeling in shock, Garib Hassam did not stop. With a wave of his hand, a group of charging Tang dynasty cavalry was immediately struck. The fiery red stellar energy was so tyrannical that it seemed to have a life of its own. It seeped through the chinks in their armor and into their bodies, fiercely burning them. Tongues of fire even spewed out of their ears, eyes, and nostrils. Chapter 975. Whoosh! Everyone in the surroundings was aghast. The mercenaries from the western regions turned pale and retreated in panic. Even the surrounding Tang Dynasty cavalry couldn't help but show a hint of fear. Every battle was a massive meat grinder. And when this meat grinder began to move, countless people would die, whether on the enemy side or on their own side. As soldiers, all of them were prepared to die on the battlefield, but none of them had expected to die like this. No one had ever been like this giant before, relying solely on their own stellar energy to burn their opponents to ash. This kind of death was too terrifying and mournful, enough to make one's heart tremble. Boom! A massive foot stomped down as Garib Hassam successfully destroyed a giant ballista. With a savage laugh, he stepped over the remains of the giant ballista and charged toward the second and final giant ballista. If he could destroy this giant ballista, the Skyquaking army's mission would be complete. Stop him! The soldiers had clearly sensed this danger as well. All of the soldiers next to the last giant ballista charged at Garib Hassam, with no regard for their own safety. At the same time, the ballista soldiers around the second giant ballista hurriedly adjusted their ballistae, hoping to use the power of the giant ballista to kill the king of giants. Although the giant ballistae were powerful, their inflexibility showed itself at this moment. The two giant ballistae weren't far from each other, and they had been shooting out of the defensive line this entire time. With Garib Hassam descending from the sky and destroying the first giant ballista, it was practically impossible for the ballista soldiers to adjust their aim and fire at Garib Hassam at such a close distance. A bunch of ignorant ants. In front of me, you are insignificant. Garib Hassam's furious roar was like a peal of thunder that resounded over their heads. Rumble! Garib Hassam punched out, sending shockwaves in all directions. Several dozen Tang cavalrymen didn't even have time to scream before they were incinerated along with their horses by the scorching flames. Boom! After this punch, Garib Hassam followed up with a kick. In the blink of an eye, several dozen Tang Dynasty reinforcements had been turned to ash. With just one punch and one kick, the dense ranks of soldiers charging at Garib Hassam were instantly emptied. The giant commander of the Skyquaking army no longer had any obstructions. Bzzz! All the ballista soldiers turned ashen. If the last giant ballista was destroyed by this giant, the Great Tang's defeat would be assured. Just as Garib Hassam was rejoicing and preparing to rush over and destroy the last giant ballista, there was a flash of light as a figure appeared in front of the second giant ballista, blocking Garib Hassam's path. All of you get out of the way. Leave this giant to me. The King Gonka's expression was cold as he glared at Garib Hassam, his body seething with energy and a thick killing intent. Not far from him, the red-bearded giant had collapsed to the ground, blood flowing out of his body, making the King Gonka seem even more powerful. In this battle between humans and giants, the King Gonka had used overwhelming strength to defeat the red-bearded giant and even kill him. But not even the King Gonka had expected that a moment of carelessness would cause his side to lose a giant ballista. At this moment, the King Gonka's rage soared to the heavens. Let me try you. Without the slightest hesitation, the one to attack was not Garib Hassam, but the King Gonka. Bright fist of massacre. In a flash of light, an enormous energy burst out of the King Gonka's body. In a flash, countless fists layered over each other, transforming into a massive mountain that smashed toward the 27-meter-tall Garib Hassam. The bright fist of massacre grew stronger the stronger it met. The red-bearded giant had already fallen to his iron fists, and this time, the King Gonka was using this fist technique to deal with the giant commander. Come at me. Garib Hassam's heart burned with rage when he saw the corpse of the nearby red-bearded giant. Without the slightest hesitation, a majestic wave of stellar energy erupted from Garib Hassam's body, transforming into a vicious fist that smashed toward the King Gonka. Rumble! No one knew how many times the King Gonka had punched, nor how many times Garib Hassam, the commander of the Skyquaking army, had countered. All the onlookers could see was a boundless sea of fire erupting into the air, clashing with the fist images of the King Gonka's bright fist of massacre. Bang! The sea of fire dissipated. Garib Hassam stood unmoving, while the King Gonka flipped through the air and crashed into the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. His face was slightly pale, but he had not been burned to ash as everyone had imagined. Human, you truly are somewhat powerful. But no matter how powerful you are still no match for me. Garib Hassam glared at the King Gonka, his eyes bursting with killing intent. Bang! He stomped his foot, and before the King Gonka could react, something happened that left everyone dumbfounded. The air trembled and steel clanged. Within Garib Hassam's body, an unprecedented war halo appeared, black, red, and gold. It exploded out from his body, rapidly expanding, supporting his feet. 5 meters, 10 meters, 20 meters. In this world, it was already unprecedented for a warrior's war halo to reach a radius of 5 meters. This also meant that this war halo had reached a terrifying range of 10 meters. But the halo beneath Garib Hassam's feet had a radius of 30 meters. This terrifying range was unimaginable to any martial artist. But this was not the most shocking thing to the crowd. War halo. This giant actually has the power of a halo. The surrounding crowd was in an uproar. For them, it was already hard to imagine that a 27 or 28 meter tall giant could actually use martial arts and stellar energy. What was even more shocking was that this giant also had a war halo. And a major characteristic of a war halo was that it could support all the members of an army. This thought caused even the King Gonka to grimace. Buzz! A moment later, black, red, and gold war halos began to spread out from Garib Hassam's feet, quickly covering the entire battlefield and supporting the feet of every skyquaking giant. Under the effect of these 3 halos, all the giants seemed to be aided by the gods, madly roaring and bellowing as their auras soared, and their already terrifying strength swelled. Ha ha ha! It's my lord's halo! Energized, the giants roared and began to madly attack the Tang dynasty reinforcements. The Skyquaking Halo. This was the only war halo of the Skyquaking army, a power the Arabian Empire had inherited from that ancient civilization. It was the only halo that had an effect on all the giants, strengthening their strength and defense. Boom! In the distance, a Skyquaking giant swung his arm, and the 7 members of the Scythe team, who had been able to suppress him, felt a powerful backlash. The 7 of them had originally been able to rely on the power of the formation to firmly suppress him, but now, they felt like they could no longer hold him back. Careful! The 7 of them hurriedly focused their minds, and focused on dealing with him. But on the battlefield, the one who had received the greatest boost in strength was the commander of the Skyquaking army, Garib Hassam. The moment the Skyquaking halo appeared, his energy began to swell with astonishing speed, reaching an astonishing level. The Gonka king's heart sank as he saw Garib Hassam's aura undergo a heaven-toppling transformation. Take another punch from me. Garib Hassam's eyes flashed with cold light, and a massive fist wrapped in fiery flames smashed down on the King Gonka. Boom! The King Gonka failed to block this blow. Even his bright fist of slaughter, which was several times his strength, could not stop Garib Hassam's heavy blow. With a grunt and a flash of flame, the King Gonka was sent flying. But just when Garib Hassam was preparing to kill the King Gonka and destroy the last giant ballista, he glanced behind him, and the commander of the giant army instantly paled. Bastard! You dare! Garib Hassam's eyes widened as his entire body exploded with a tsunami of rage and killing intent. As it turned out, before being sent flying by Garib Hassam, the King Gonka had used stellar energy to envelop the giant ballista and the nearby ballista soldiers, pushing them away like flowing water. And in the direction that the giant ballista had been pushed, a powerful figure, covered in roiling flames like a blazing sun, was rushing over. King Gonka, I've come to help you. That sonorous voice was still echoing in the sky. Banahan, the chief of the Farahan tribe, cast the great fire crow spell, and crashed into the arms of the mountain-like, majestic, and powerful Garib Hassam like a shooting star. Boom! Boom! In an instant, an earth-shaking explosion and a deafening boom were heard. Unparalleled airflow condensed and swept in all directions. When the airflow swept across the ground, it produced a steel-like sound. Chapter 976. King Gonka, go protect the giant ballista. I'll deal with this giant. Banahan's loud voice could be heard ringing out of the battlefield as the roiling flames devoured the sea. As the commander of the skyquaking army, Garib Hassam's stellar energy had always been infused with the power of fire, and it was extremely tyrannical. Banahan's Great Fire Crow art was a renowned fire element art of the western regions, and after receiving Wang Chong's guidance, Banahan's strength had reached a new level. In terms of fire element arts, probably only Banahan could contend against the King of Giants. Okay. The Gonka King's eyes flashed, and without the slightest hesitation, he shot toward the second giant ballista. The intensity of the clash between the two was too intense, and a fire on the city gate was a disaster for the fish in the moat. He had to think of a way to move the last giant ballista away from the battlefield. If possible, he could use this giant ballista to help Banahan deal with the King of Giants. But the danger was far from resolved. All the giants were roaring and charging toward the giant ballista. Even the King of Giants, Garib Hassam, was attempting to circle around Banahan and destroy the giant ballista. The King Gonka had to focus all his attention on defending the last sliver of hope for the Tang dynasty. In the distance, in front of the first defense line, Wang Chong was facing a far more dangerous situation than the King Gonka and Banahan. Rumble! The quaking of the earth grew more and more pronounced, and the armor of the tens of thousands of Tang cavalry and soldiers began to clatter and clatter. The atmosphere on the battlefield was growing tenser and tenser. The four behemoths were accelerating their assault, and the 200,000 Arab soldiers were getting closer and closer. The battle was finally about to begin. Wang Chong, Wang Yan, get ready. Gao Xinji finally opened his mouth when he saw the approaching enemy troops. The behemoths were extremely powerful, and once they got past the defense line, the army would immediately suffer grievous casualties. The four of them had to act and stop the four behemoths. Clang! As soon as Gao Xinji finished his words, he unsheathed his long sword. A sharp aura pierced through the air and locked onto a mountain-like beast. Next to Gao Xinji, the ground shook, and with a flash of light, power gathered from all directions. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic heavenly deity rose from the ground. Cheng Qianli swiftly brought out the supreme desolation heavenly god. A gigantic heavenly deity stood in front of the defensive line. Countless chains slithered and coiled around his body, emitting a metallic clanging sound. Cheng Qianli reached out with one hand and grabbed a steel chain in his hand. He looked forward with a solemn expression. Mighty miracle god formation. Almost at the same time, Wang Chong's father Wang Yan released a furious roar. His body quickly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into an enormous heavenly deity. He was calm and dignified, standing at Cheng Qianli's side. The three of them were on high alert. After 2 battles against the behemoths, the three of them were rather exhausted and no longer in peak condition. However, whether it was Gao Xinji, Cheng Qianli or Wang Yan, none of them cowered in the slightest. The three of them stood there like cornerstones, the source of the confidence of the entire army. This won't do. The mood was tense to the extreme. Standing on Gao Xinji's right, Wang Chong felt an unprecedented danger as he looked at the three. In their current state, the three of them were simply incapable of fighting against the behemoth army and the 200,000 Arab soldiers. I have to find a way to deal with the behemoth army. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, and countless thoughts were flitting through his mind. The behemoth army was not an invincible existence. Wang Chong was well aware of this. Otherwise, the Arabian Empire would have long ago used the behemoth army to conquer the world. But such a thing had never happened before. Not only that, from the intelligence reports that Wang Chong had gathered, the Caliph of the Arabian Empire was extremely cautious in using the behemoth army. Unless absolutely necessary, he would never use it. On the surface, one could think that the Caliph was either treating this army with great importance, or that there was no worthy opponent. But as the illustrious war saint of his last life, Wang Chong knew that this was not the truth. Just what is it? What is the weakness of the behemoth army? Wang Chong mentally muttered to himself. The earth quaked as the heavy footsteps of the behemoths pressed an invisible pressure on Wang Chong. There wasn't much time left, and Wang Chong was well aware that the strength of Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli was far from enough. He had to find a way to deal with the 4 behemoths. Only then could he truly resolve this crisis. Wang Chong, hurry and call back the Wuxian cavalry. Gao Xianji's anxious voice exploded in front of the defense line. The God King Yama formation required the power of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. With the battle imminent, Wang Chong had to call back all the Wuxian cavalry. But once he did, the soldiers of the Skyquaking army would have no one left to fight back. For a moment, Wang Chong was caught between a rock and a hard place. 180 zhang, 160 zhang, 140 zhang. As the distance grew smaller and smaller, a cloud of dust crashed against the first defense line. Wang Chong's heart was thumping, the scent of death following him like a shadow. The lives of 100,000 soldiers, the thousands of li of the western regions, and the hundreds of thousands of civilians several thousand li from Talas all rested on Wang Chong's shoulders. At that moment, Wang Chong felt a suffocating pressure. Time seemed to slow down countless times, and Wang Chong could see the anxious movements of Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli, their mouths opening and closing as they called out his name. In the distance, the behemoths were howling madly in a cloud of dust. Wang Chong could even see their fangs gleaming with cold light as they opened their mouths. The breath they exhaled was carried by the wind through the air and buffeted Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong could smell the thick stench in the air. What weakness? What is it? Wang Chong's mind was rapidly turning, but a moment later, a massive beast's paw slammed into the ground, causing the earth to crack open and countless stones to explode in every direction. The massive boom immediately brought Wang Chong's attention back to reality. "My lord! Careful! Prepare to attack!" Panic reigned behind the first defense line, and panicked shouts resounded through the air. Clang clang clang. The rain of spears and arrows began to adjust their direction, aiming at the 4 behemoths and the Arab army. In the blink of an eye, the two sides were less than 80 zhang apart. Release! Behind the first defense line, 1,000 Tang Dynasty ballistae fired in unison. In a flash, 1,000 black ballista bolts flew, like locusts toward the heads of the 4 behemoths. More than half of the Tang Dynasty's ballistae had been transferred to deal with the skyquaking giants. Only these 1,000-some Tang Dynasty ballistae were left to deal with the behemoths. Clang clang clang. But with a metallic clatter, the 1,000-some ballista bolts struck the heads of the behemoths, but they were all blocked by a layer of tough armor. It's useless. The Reaper, Devotee, Burning One, and Consecrated are all equipped with the toughest metal essence of the Arabian Empire. 1,000 tons of the finest steel can only be refined into half a kilogram of metal essence. Tens of millions of tons of refined metal were used to forge the armor of these 4 behemoths. No weapon can pierce through this tough metal essence armor. Mazel stood in the rear of the army, his centipede monster beneath him. He inwardly sneered as he watched the Tang Dynasty ballista bolts raining down from the sky. Whether it was man or animal, the head was a vital point for almost all living creatures. This was also the case for the behemoths. As long as one was a normal person, it would not be difficult to judge this. In history, there had been some enemy marshals, war gods, or legendary heroes who had tried to use this point to attack the heads of the behemoths, but the majority had failed, with only a small number of them having managed to wound the behemoths. It was precisely because of these experiences that the behemoth army had long ago considered this point. Mazel had long ago come up with the idea of forging armor for the heads of the behemoths. The metal essence armor had come into being as a result. This kind of armor was tough and dense. Even the most formidable of sabers and swords would find it difficult to wound it, making it the ideal armor for the behemoths. But metal essence was far too precious. Even the Arabian Empire had only been able to forge 4 sets of armor. Although there were many powerful opponents, none of them could pose a fatal threat to the behemoths, so the plan had been put on hold. Mazel had never imagined that he would encounter such a powerful foe in the distant Talas and kill 3 of the behemoths. But his original plan had proved effective. The 4 behemoths equipped with metal essence armor were virtually invincible on the battlefield. Not even the giant ballistae had been able to threaten these four strongest behemoths. Buzz! Mazel swiftly formed a series of seals, once more adjusting the direction of the four behemoths and the distance between them. Then he had his centipede monster burrow into the ground and vanish. Release! Without the slightest hesitation, a second wave of 1,000 ballistae arrived. This time, the focus of the attack was still on the heads of the four behemoths, but many of the ballista bolts were aimed at the bodies of the behemoths. Clang clang clang. As expected, all the ballista bolts aimed at the heads were blocked by the metal essence armor. But all the ballista bolts aimed at the bodies of the behemoths succeeded. Hundreds of long black crossbow bolts pierced into the bodies of the four giant beasts, leaving behind beehive-like holes on the surface of their bodies. Then they quickly entered the bodies of the giant beasts. Chapter 977. 70 feet. 60 feet. The two sides were getting closer and closer. After one wave of attacks after another, the behemoths finally began their counterattack. Bang! With a roar, a fiery red lizard-like behemoth was the first to attack. It opened its mouth and spat out a thick, almost tangible flame, like boiling lava, at the Tang defense line over a distance of several dozen zhang. The Burning One. This was the first behemoth created by the Arabian Empire with a special ability. The entire plan had taken a very long time. In order to raise this behemoth, the Arabian Empire had expended a vast amount of resources, using special medicines to raise it, and then mobilizing more than 10,000 fire element experts of varying strength to pour fire element energy into the lizard-like behemoth from a young age. After 6 years of constant nurturing, this powerful Burning One was finally born. Whoosh! These flames had come so suddenly that they had been caught completely unprepared. Their impression of the behemoths was that they relied on their massive bodies and terrifying strength to fight. Thus, when the Burning One spewed out flames, they were caught off guard. Aya! Screams filled the air as countless shieldmen and infantry were set ablaze, transforming into massive balls of fire. The flames were so intense that even the steel walls and the shields of the shieldmen were scorched red, smoke rising from their bodies. Careful! An anxious shout echoed throughout the entire defensive line. Before the voice faded away, a deafening roar was heard. Of the four behemoths, a white bear behemoth bared its white fangs and charged forward. In the blink of an eye, it had broken free from the four behemoths and was charging at the first defense line. 40 feet. 20 feet. This white bear behemoth was so fast that even Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli grimaced. Stop them! With no time to speak, Gao Xianji roared and charged out from behind the defense line. Boom! In the instant that it charged out, Gao Xianji flicked his wrist, and a majestic sword qi shot out with unparalleled sharpness. It was 20 to 30 meters long, and it slashed towards the fiery red lizard-like beast. Buzz! In a flash of light, the Burning One's flames were cut in two by Gao Xianji. His boundless sword qi swept through the air, instantly vanquishing the terrifying flames. As a protector general of the Anxi Protectorate Army, Gao Xianji had reached the pinnacle of combat. He had chosen the perfect moment and angle to strike, using the smallest amount of force to neutralize the flames of the Burning One. Bang! At almost the same time, Vice Protector General Qing Qianli roared and transformed into the Supreme Desolation God. With a single step, he crossed the first defense line and faced the 10-meter-tall sandstorm as he charged at the white bear behemoth. Whoosh! Before man and beast could even make contact, Qing Qianli flicked his wrist, and 10-some chains of stellar energy shot forward, as if they had a life of their own, wrapping themselves around the mouth, limbs, and body of the white bear behemoth. Come! Qing Qianli roared furiously. His hair and beard fluttered as he fiercely collided with the white bear-like beast. Boom! Stellar energy overflowed in all directions, and surging sand and dust shot out. Under the support of the stellar energy, the sand and dust were like flying iron sand, emitting waves of ear-piercing whistles. As Qing Qianli attacked, a massive figure brushed past Qing Qianli. Wang Chang's father Wang Yan had also attacked. Rumble! There was a heaven-shaking boom as the mighty miracle god clashed with another behemoth, 30-some zhang away. The earth between them suddenly split open, a long and winding fissure rapidly expanding, piercing right through the Great Tang's first defense line. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Translated by Ciencia World. Under the impact of this force, 7 or 8 huge steel walls immediately fell apart and were blasted away. Gao Xianji, Cheng Qianli and Wang Yan, these 3 supreme commanders of the Tang dynasty, had all attacked. Roar! There was a heaven-shaking roar as the final giant ape charged at the first defense line, stirring up a cloud of dust. Careful! The rear of the defense line was in a state of panic, and with a metallic clatter, more than 1,000 Tang ballistae began to attack. Tens of thousands of ballista bolts rained down on that fiendish behemoth. But in the howling winds, a black ape arm as thick as a mountain swept through the air, swatting away at least half of the ballista bolts. The collision of the ape arm with the ballista bolts produced a metallic clatter. Of the several hundred ballista bolts, only 10 or 20 managed to penetrate the giant ape's body. The rest were blocked by a tough layer of material and dropped to the ground. The Consecrated. This was one of the strongest behemoths of the Arabian Empire's behemoth army. Not only did it possess immense strength, it also possessed a body of bronze and bones of steel, giving it a defense far greater than that of any other behemoth. This ability had appeared on its own as the behemoth matured, as if it had been blessed by a god. Thus it was called the Consecrated. The Consecrated rarely participated in wars, but when they did, there was basically nothing that could stop them. Although it couldn't breathe fire like the Burning One, in terms of pure strength, no behemoth in the behemoth army could compare to the Consecrated. Release! 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 At the first defense line, the armored Chen Bin stared grimly at the giant ape in front of him. He swung down his 3-foot-long wood steel sword as he shouted at the top of his lungs. This giant ape's defense was far too astonishing, completely different from the behemoths from before. Although the ballista bolts hadn't been able to deal much damage to the behemoths, they had at least been able to penetrate their bodies, but they had been completely ineffective against this giant ape. The Tang dynasty ballistae could pierce through plate armor several feet thick, but they were useless against this giant ape. Roar! With a roar, the mountain-like giant ape kept approaching. 60 feet, 30 feet. Boom! A black, furry foot suddenly stomped down on the tall steel defense line. The extremely sturdy and thick steel wall, 3 to 4 meters tall, was like a small piece of paper beneath the ape's foot. It quickly twisted and deformed, and then was smashed into the ground with a bang. Boom! The giant foot landed on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. The powerful shockwave sent all the soldiers within a radius of several dozen feet, flying like fallen leaves. However, before anyone could react, the sky darkened in the next moment. A furry giant black ape clenched its 5 fingers and immediately smashed towards the ground at lightning speed. Not good. Run! The warhorses neighed in fear, and the Tang soldiers behind the defense line stared at that massive ape palm, all of them feeling extremely insignificant and panic-stricken. At this moment, all of them could sense the thick stench of death. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Hoofbeats. Dust billowed as everyone fled in all directions. But compared to the giant ape's speed and power, they were still too slow. Out of the way! Seeing that the group of people was about to be crushed into meat paste by the giant ape's power, a loud roar resounded through the void in a flash. In a flash, a violent wave of stellar energy surged out like a raging river. It enveloped the cavalry under the ape's palm and ruthlessly flung them in all directions. At this critical moment, Wang Chong had finally come to his senses and struck. Bzz. The wind howled, but few people noticed that the moment Wang Chong struck, Wang Chong had also flung out a black object. Boom! The mountainous ape's palm landed heavily on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and sand behind the defense line. But almost at the same time that the ape's palm landed, the giant ape let out a shocking scream. In that instant, everyone could clearly see a long awl piercing out from the back of the giant ape's palm. In a flash, Wang Chong had thrown out his 10-meter-long cudgel, aiming its sharp tip at the giant ape's palm. In normal circumstances, This awl-shaped cudgel should not have been able to pierce through the giant ape's palm, but the giant ape's enormous strength had allowed the sharp end of the cudgel to pierce through its palm. The pain was so intense that the consecrated, the strongest member of the behemoth army, couldn't help but raise its head to the sky and howl. "Everyone get back!" Wang Chong roared as he charged forward. The Wuxian cavalry could not be recalled, and the last Arabian behemoth could not be left unattended. Wang Chong could only rely on himself. Clang! Wang Chong unsheathed his sword, his body twisting like a bolt of lightning as he charged at the terrifying and savage giant ape. Pung! He stepped on the giant ape's pierced palm and quickly flew towards the giant ape's furry arm. His speed was extremely fast, and after a few breaths, his left foot pushed off the giant ape's arm, and he shot off again. Art of God and demon obliteration. As he galloped along the giant ape's body, Wang Chong immediately used the world's #1 sword art taught to him by the Tang dynasty's war god So Yung's son. Chapter 978. In a flash, sword chi crisscrossed the air, milky white beams of sword chi more than 100 feet long, more dazzling than the sun, piercing through the giant ape's body. In an instant, the giant ape's fur was sent flying. Thin lines of blood appeared on the giant ape's mountainous arm, and a putrid stench of blood spurted out from the wound. Wang Chong did not stop, leaving afterimages on the giant ape's arms as he shot toward the ape's head. Eyes! Their eyes must be their weakness. In a flash, Wang Chong glanced up at the sky. 2 scarlet eyes floated in the air like 2 giant lanterns. These were the eyes of the giant ape. Although the Arabs had used some kind of tough metal armor to cover the giant ape's head, the eyes could not be protected. This was the only place where one could attack the giant ape. Roar! The giant ape bellowed, its scarlet eyes instantly focused on Wang Chong, who was on its arm and rapidly sprinting away. Even though all humans were like fleas to the giant ape, there was no doubt that the giant ape would remember this flea that had injured it. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, the giant ape raised its other arm, spread open its fingers, and lunged at Wang Chong with lightning-fast speed. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong shot forward. By a hair's breadth, he had managed to pass through the giant ape's 5 fingers and shoot from its right arm to its left. Pung! His body leaped forward, and his speed did not slow down in the slightest. Like moving clouds and flowing water, he continued to charge along the surface of the giant ape's body toward its head. As he sprinted forward, the woozy steel sword in Wang Chong's hand continued to unleash tens of thousands of bolts of sword chi that slashed at the giant ape's body. Not even the ballistae of the Tang dynasty could pierce through the giant ape's body, but it could not stop Wang Chong's art of God and demon obliteration. But Wang Chong's weakness in his lack of cultivation was immediately exposed. If Su Zhengchen were to execute the art of God and demon obliteration, he would definitely be able to severely injure the giant ape. However, Wang Chong was still far from reaching that level. With his current level of mastery, his sword chi could only penetrate several chi into the giant ape's skin before coming to a halt. It was simply incapable of penetrating the tough and resilient defense beneath the giant ape's skin. Bum bum bum. Although Wang Chong's constant barrage of sword chi had not heavily injured the giant ape, the stinging pain had successfully enraged the consecrated. The giant ape roared, its scarlet eyes reflecting Wang Chong's image, their depths brimming with savagery and a desire to destroy. Without the slightest hesitation, the giant ape's 2 hairy palms, brimming with astonishing power, lashed at Wang Chong like a torrential storm. But at this moment, Wang Chong was like a leaf, completely unaffected by any force. Although the giant ape's attacks seemed fierce, they were never able to truly land a blow on Wang Chong. Wang Chong was getting closer and closer to the behemoth's head. Just when Wang Chong was about to leap onto the giant ape's head, an invisible ripple suddenly swept through the air. A moment later, the situation changed. Bang! The giant ape, which had been in a frenzy and attacking like a headless fly, suddenly regained a sliver of calm in its eyes. And then the unthinkable occurred. The giant ape clasped its palms together and heavily struck out. Roar! Accompanied by a world-shaking roar, a powerful shockwave spread out in all directions with the giant ape at the center. The destructive power contained in the shockwave was so strong that a circle of visible white ripples could be seen in the void, spreading rapidly in all directions from far to near. What's going on here? Wang Chong was flabbergasted. He had carefully observed this behemoth before, and other than its astonishing strength, he had no other abilities. He had never imagined that just when he was about to leap onto the giant ape's head, this would happen. The behemoth possessed terrifying strength. As a top-class vicious beast, its strength was so immense that not even great generals could contend against it. Moreover, unlike the rhino-shaped behemoth, the destroyer, and the terrorizer, the consecrated was born in the form of a giant ape. Its arms were nimble, its body agile, and its fighting ability far superior. The combined strength of Wang Chong and Gao Xianji had not been enough to stop an ordinary behemoth, much less one of the top-class behemoths of Arabia. Although the giant ape didn't use any stellar energy, its astonishing strength was enough to shatter the heavens and sunder the earth. Not even a top-class great general could compare to it. Wang Chong still had not formed the God King Yama, so he was even less capable of fighting back. Thump! With no time to think, Wang Chong did a backflip and shot off the giant ape's body, landing on the ground. Bzzz. Wang Chong reacted quickly enough, but a white shockwave still brushed past him, clashing with Wang Chong's stellar energy. Bang! There was a massive explosion as Wang Chong's body trembled, the stellar energy around his body dimming, and his face paling. Bang! He was sent flying like a rag doll. Marquis. On the ground, the expressions of Xue Qianjun, Sun Jiming, Zhuang Bufan, and the others changed drastically when they saw this scene. All of them seemed as if they'd suffered a heavy blow, and their faces instantly turned pale. Wang Chong was the leader of the army, the source of its morale. His injury was a massive blow to the army. Hurry, go save Marquis. Xue Qianjun and the others immediately rushed in the direction where Wang Chong had fallen. At this moment, the area around the giant ape had become a land of death. If one did not have enough strength, recklessly charging him would only result in death. But they had no time to worry about such things. But blessings did not come in pairs. Just as Xue Qianjun and the others rushed out, boom boom boom. At almost the same time, explosions rang out, accompanied by groans. In the blink of an eye, Xue Qianjun subconsciously turned his head to take a look. He saw two godlike figures and a tall, thin figure being sent flying by an even stronger force. Lord Gao, Vice Protector General Cheng, General Wang. Cries of alarm rang out as Xue Qianjun and all the other Tang dynasty soldiers, who had seen this sight, trembled in fear, their faces ashen. Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, Cheng Qianli, and Wang Yan were the stabilizing pillars of the Tang dynasty in Talas, the source of the army's morale. The reason the more than 100,000 Tang dynasty soldiers had been able to maintain their composure in the face of a pincer attack and an unprecedentedly powerful foe was because of these four imperial great generals. But no one expected that all four of them would be injured at this time. In a one-on-one fight, Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, or Cheng Qianli would find it impossible to stop the four behemoths alone. Roar! After sending four of the Tang dynasty's best commanders flying, the four behemoths were no longer hindered and smoothly charged into the Tang dynasty's defense line. Boom boom boom. Dust churned as one heavy steel wall after another was pushed to the ground, and the shockwaves stirred up by the four behemoths sent countless surrounding soldiers, flying like they were made of paper. Aya! Aya! Screams filled the air, and the great Tang had suffered grievous losses. Kill! The Arab soldiers were invigorated by this sight. These Arab soldiers had originally been following the behemoths, keeping a certain distance from them, not daring to get too close. But when they saw this, they immediately changed their strategy. Separating the distance of more than 100 zhang, they rushed past the behemoths and into the Tang dynasty's defense line. Release! 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 The more than 1,000 Tang dynasty ballistae had originally been firing at the four behemoths. But when they saw this sight, they paled and immediately adjusted their direction, shooting at the savage Arab soldiers beyond the defense line. Swish swish swish. Each ballista bolt was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, reaping the lives of 7 or 8 Arab soldiers. But no matter how powerful the Tang dynasty ballistae were, they could not stop these red-eyed and murderous Arab soldiers. Daluan Ruozan, Huashu Wizong, it's about time for us to move out. On the high hills, Dewissely's hair blew in the wind as he gazed at the distant battlefield. The situation has changed. The Tang dynasty won't be able to last past today. Now is the best time for us to strike. The situation has changed. The Tang dynasty won't be able to last past today. Now is the best time for us to strike. Dewissely's eyes flashed as a majestic will to fight surged out of his body, stirring the air around him. The strength the Arabs had displayed was simply too powerful. As a top-class great general, Dewissely's desire to fight had also been stirred. Wait a little longer. There's no need to rush this matter. Daluan Ruozan shook his head and suddenly said. His eyes were still extremely calm as he looked into the distance. Abu Muslim and Ziyad have still not moved. Now is not the best time to strike. Wait a little longer. Wait until the Tang dynasty has suffered grievous losses. At that time, it won't be too late for us to intervene. Dewissely said nothing, turning his gaze to Huashu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoch. His expression was as calm as a statue, and his eyes were fixed on the same person. It was clear that he was following Daluan Ruozan's lead. Humph! With a cold snort, Dewissely flew into the air, and before anyone could react, he was already riding his mighty Turkic steed toward the rear of the great Tang army, as if it were flat ground. Dewissely, behind him, Huashu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoch both grimaced at this sight, and they subconsciously called out to him. But Dewissely was so fast that in the blink of an eye, he had left a cloud of dust in his wake. There's no need to persuade him. Don't you see that he's alone? He didn't bring a single Turkic soldier with him. Chapter 979. Dewissely was far smarter than many people imagined. Daluan Ruozan wanted to preserve his strength, and Dewissely valued his soldiers even more than he did. Thus, despite his fierce words, Dewissely had no intention of sending his own soldiers. This could fool others, but not Daluan Ruozan. The two of them stared at Dewissely's back in understanding. So Prime Minister already guessed that he would strike? Huashu Wizong said. Daluan Ruozan only smiled. His gaze swept over the front of the battlefield, but as it passed over the distant defense line, a hint of gloominess appeared on his face. The Arabian Empire was simply too powerful. In this long-distance raid to the city of Talas, Daluan Ruozan had originally believed that he and Wang Chong would have a decisive battle, a contest of strategy, and tactics. In this world, both Daluan Ruozan and Wang Chong were top-class tacticians, and those who could compete with them were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. This was a contest between the wise, and Daluan Ruozan had been very much looking forward to it. Day and night in the Uzun royal capital's prison, Daluan Ruozan had not waited for a single moment for this moment to arrive. But it was now apparent that this wish was destined to come to naught. The strength the Arabian Empire had displayed was far too enormous. This sort of strength suppressed all tactics, strategies, and schemes, rendering all schemes useless. Even someone as proud and conceited as Daluan Ruozan couldn't help but feel fear and apprehension. Only the Tang dynasty and Wang Chong could last so long under such fierce attacks. Any other faction, not even the Uzun Empire or the Western Turkic Khaganate, would have been able to last so long. It's a pity that the Tang dynasty is destined to fail. Although I cannot defeat you in person to fulfill my long-cherished wish, it is enough for me to witness your death and watch your last journey. Daluan Ruozan sighed deeply. He knew that Wang Chong's fate truly did not bode well. Although he was unwilling to admit it, Daluan Ruozan couldn't help but feel a deep sense of regret at seeing Wang Chong die at the hands of the Arabs' kill. In front of the defense line in the distance, the battle cries were deafening. The situation that the 100,000 troops of the Tang dynasty were facing was much more dangerous and perilous than anyone had imagined. Kill these heathens! Tens of thousands of Arab cavalry surged past the defense line and into the Tang dynasty ranks. In the past, The Arabs would have had to pay a heavy price to cross this defense line. But now, large gaps had appeared in the Tang dynasty's defense line, and the orderly and well-fortified Tang dynasty phalanxes were in shambles under the charge of the behemoths. Warning! The battle is about to be lost. 20,000 Tang dynasty soldiers have died. Warning! The battle is about to be lost. Talas is about to be lost. User is about to be obliterated. Final warning. If the battle is lost, all users' destiny energy will be erased. At the same time, all users' imprints will be erased. A series of callous and emotionless voices rang out in Wang Chong's mind. The terrifying white shockwaves of the giant ape sent Wang Chong plummeting several hundred zhang away like a ragdoll. The wind howled on both sides and the airflow surged. Countless lights and shadows flew past his ears. And at that moment, time seemed to slow down countless times. Wang Chong's head was down, and he could see the entire battlefield. He could see the roaring skyquaking giants striding toward the last giant ballista. And he could also see the chaos of the Tang dynasty army. As he looked closer, Wang Chong could see countless cavalry fleeing in panic, some from the Tang dynasty and others from the mercenaries. All of them had pale faces and panic in their eyes. The four giant beasts had completely destroyed everyone's confidence. Roar! The behemoths roared, and as his gaze followed the fleeing cavalry, Wang Chong saw an endless sea of red. Severed limbs littered the earth, human corpses, horse corpses, countless pairs of eyes weakly staring up at the sky. And beneath these severed limbs, Wang Chong could see rivers and lakes of blood flowing in all directions. Thousands upon thousands of broken weapons and halberds were thrust into the ground, their banners stained red, as they were trampled under the feet of the Arab soldiers. Further ahead, near the first defense line, Wang Chong could see the devastation of the battlefield. The eyes of the other three behemoths were scarlet, and their massive paws and feet blotted out the sun as they smashed down again and again. The attacks of these three behemoths caused even the sturdiest ground of Talas to crack, and boulders weighing 1,000 jin were thrown 10 some zhang into the air by the shockwaves of the explosions. In the face of such ferocious power, the strength of a human was far too petty and insignificant. This was not something that any shield soldier or cavalry could contend against. This was the place where the Tang dynasty soldiers had suffered the most casualties. Even Gao Xianji, Cheng Qianli, and his father Wang Yan had been sent flying. Wang Chong could see that they were frantically trying to say something to him, but Wang Chong could hear nothing. He could only see the endless corpses on the ground, and the despairing and lifeless eyes of the dead. In that instant, a boundless pain surged into his heart. Am I about to fail? As a bolt of lightning flashed through his mind, Wang Chong's heart trembled, and the pain made it hard for him to breathe. Soldiers were the Tao of life and death, the principle of survival and destruction. It was common sense for a general to die on the battlefield. Wang Chong had originally believed that other than victory, reversing the desperate tide, changing the fate of Talas, and saving the Tang dynasty, he could ignore everything else, calmly view them all. But when he saw the corpses strewn across the ground, especially the corpses of the soldiers, Wang Chong was able to recognize them, even recognize their names. Some of these people had followed him from the southwest, and had never retreated a single step. They had absolute faith in him, even more faith in him than in himself, but in the end, they had died here. An intense electric current ran from his toes to his hair. Wang Chong's entire body trembled as he felt a pain that came from the depths of his soul. These were the strongest soldiers he had raised. They should not have died here. He had prepared for at least half a year for this battle. 3,000 Tang dynasty ballistae, 5,000 elite Wuxian cavalry armed to the teeth, and many mercenaries and well-trained protectorate soldiers. This battle should have been a complete victory. Just what had gone wrong? It shouldn't have been like this. It definitely shouldn't have been like this. Countless thoughts flew through his mind. Wang Chong's eyes were wide open as he clenched his fists. The Tang dynasty's defense line had already been broken, and the steel defense line that he had personally set up was useless. Even though they had done all they could, they had still been unable to stop the four terrifying behemoths. Even he himself had been sent flying by the behemoths. But no matter what the situation, he would never give up, much less admit defeat. No, there must still be hope, there must be. Wang Chong clenched his teeth. Boom! Finally, Wang Chong crashed into the ground like a cannonball, creating a massive crater. Time returned to normal. Wang Chong vomited blood and stood up. At this moment, countless voices began to swarm toward him, and Wang Chong could finally hear the voices of Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli. Wang Chong, retreat! Retreat! There's nothing we can do. We can't fight against the behemoths. We've already lost Talas. Retreat! Preserve our strength. We still have a chance. Wang Chong saw Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli anxiously looking at him. Neither Gao Xianji nor Cheng Qianli were cowards. In the Battle of Talas, the fact that Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli had managed to hold their ground for more than 2 months was enough to prove their worth. Gao Xianji had never given up during this entire battle, but now Gao Xianji had been forced to give up. Although this decision was painful, it was the wisest one. Gao Xianji's heart was extremely heavy as he looked at the 4 tireless behemoths and the bloody corpses strewn across the battlefield. There was no doubt that the Tang dynasty had been utterly defeated in this battle. Continuing to persist would only result in meaningless casualties. They had been able to put up a desperate fight against humans, but against these behemoths, they had to retreat. They could not allow the last bit of the Tang dynasty's strength in the western regions to be completely buried here. If they knew that they would lose this battle, why would they resist? As the commander-in-chief, the wisest decision was to lead the army out of the encirclement and do their best to preserve their strength so that they could fight again in the future. Chong'er, run! Wang Yan also spoke, his face fraught with panic. In all battles, Wang Yan had always bravely pressed forward, never retreating even half a step. Even in the arduous War of the Southwest, he had never had the slightest thought of retreating. But in the face of these behemoths and the vast army behind them, Wang Yan could see no hope of survival. Even though his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife, Wang Yan was forced to make this decision. The strength of the behemoths was not something that humans could contend against. They had done all they could to stop them, but they had still failed. If they did not retreat now, even if the Tang dynasty still had more than 80,000 soldiers, the terrifying strength of the behemoths would instantly destroy more than half of them. Moreover, there were still 200,000 Arab cavalry in the rear, and in the distance, Dalawan Ruozan was still glaring at them. They could only retreat as quickly as possible to preserve their strength. Although they didn't want to admit it, they had truly lost this battle. No, impossible. The Battle of Talas will never end like this. I will never retreat. Chapter 980. The Tang dynasty cannot be defeated. The Tang dynasty cannot be defeated. Wang Chong clenched his fists so tightly that his bones creaked. No one understood better than him that once Talas was lost, the Tang dynasty would never have a chance to rise again. The western regions would be lost, Qixi would be lost, Longxi would be lost, Yuzhou would be sickened, the Tang dynasty would fall into internal strife, and the calamity would descend. Step by step, the Tang dynasty would descend into an abyss of eternal damnation. If he wanted to change all this and save the Tang dynasty, he had to hold Talas and defeat Arabia. Only by holding Talas could he slowly reverse the tragic fate of the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the Stone of Destiny would not allow him to retreat. Retreat meant death. Roar! The distant behemoths roared, and as Wang Chong clenched his teeth and refused to retreat, a cloud of dust rose from the defense line. The Burning One, the Consecrated, and the White Bear were wreaking havoc on the first defense line, causing countless Tang dynasty soldiers to flee in panic, thousands of corpses in their wake. Blood seeped into the ground, and in a place where no one could see, a figure sinisterly chuckled. Die! Die! All of you die for me! My obedient pets, kill all these infidels for me! The hunchbacked Mazel sat on the head of the centipede monster, his hands raised high into the air. Blood seeped down from the ground, dripping onto his head, face, and arms. Mazel's face was suffused with the ultimate joy of slaughter. As the commander of the behemoth army, a favored subject of the caliph, a deformed and ugly monster. Even in the Arabian Empire, Mazel was a sinister and terrifying existence feared by all. But few people knew that Mazel was even more sinister and terrifying than he let on. Mazel had never feared war. Wherever there was a stalemate, there would be Mazel and his behemoths. In every battle, Mazel's favorite thing to do was to dive into the ground while the behemoths crushed their foes into meat paste, allowing the thick blood to wash over him like a raging river. And through this slaughter and blood, Mazel obtained boundless pleasure. This was far more satisfying and intoxicating than his status as the commander of the behemoth beast army and a favored subject of the caliph. I said before, no one can stop my behemoths, not even these Tang people. Kill them all for me. Ha ha ha. Mazel's eyes were round as he wildly laughed, his expression one of excitement. The great Tang had already been defeated, and Mazel was well aware that the moment he had sent out his 4 strongest behemoths, the Tang had already lost. Moreover, there were still the 200,000 elite Arab cavalry. There's only that brat left. Mazel narrowed his eyes as this thought flitted through his mind. These infidels who had opposed Arabia truly deserved to be killed, but in Mazel's mind, there was one person who was even more detestable than the Tang people. This was someone that Mazel had to kill as soon as possible. 3 behemoths was the largest loss the behemoth army had ever suffered in its history, and it was a disgrace to Mazel. Once I kill you, I'll personally make your head into a toilet bowl. Mazel inwardly sneered, and a moment later, he used a spell to communicate with the giant ape on the ground. Of all the behemoths, the consecrated strength was unquestionable. No behemoth was stronger than it. Dust churned on the ground as the 4 behemoths wreaked havoc on the battlefield like evil spirits of the apocalypse. Suddenly, a savage light flashed through the scarlet eyes of the giant ape on the far left as it locked onto the distant Wang Chong. Roar! The behemoth roared, and with several leaps, the giant ape abandoned the others and lunged at Wang Chong. Its steely fist created a massive vortex in the air as it smashed toward Wang Chong with the momentum of a thunderbolt. The giant ape's attack had been extremely sudden, and it had chosen the exact moment when the Tang dynasty had been routed, and Wang Chong had received the order to break out of the encirclement. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he prepared to retreat. Marquis, watch out! Ballista soldiers, stop the behemoths! Marquis! Boom! The roars of the behemoths had attracted the attention of the behemoths, and when they saw this sight, they were all stunned and terrified. Marquis was truly powerful, but even more powerful were the behemoths raised by Arabia, existences that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Even more frightening was that Marquis was standing there motionless, clearly in a daze. Bum bum bum. On the vast battlefield, a series of booming sounds rang out. Long black crossbow bolts whizzed out from all directions like flood dragons emerging from the sea, shooting towards the giant ape's sky-blotting fist. At this moment, all the ballista soldiers that were not under attack and could still fire were participating in the assault. However, there was only a series of earth-shattering metallic sounds. All of the black crossbow bolts seemed to have hit the giant ape's fist, and all of the attacks were completely blocked, as if they had hit the hardest layer of barriers. Sharp ballista bolts, each weighing tens of thousands of jin, rained down from the sky. The giant ape's fist, on the other hand, accelerated toward Wang Chong. Ah! Cries of alarm rang out as everyone felt their hearts go cold. Wang Chong, watch out! Just when it seemed like Wang Chong was about to be struck by the consecrated, a figure suddenly shot forward, swinging his sword and unleashing a destructive beam of sword chi at the giant ape's fist. Gao Xianji, you should worry about yourself. Buzz! Wang! Something strange happened. In that instant, black smoke billowed behind the giant ape, and a powerful blast of energy blotted out the sky. Like a bolt of lightning, it struck Gao Xianji's majestic sword chi with a boom. Before the sword could strike the giant ape and stop its attack, it was struck by the vast, powerful and steel-like energy. With a rumble, it vanished into nothingness. How could this be? On the ground, everyone who saw this scene was shocked. Gao Xianji was the commander of the Anqi Protectorate Army, and one of the top-class great generals of the Tang dynasty. His fighting prowess was probably on par with Wuxia, but someone had been able to scatter his sword qi with a single blow. This sort of cultivation was simply astonishing. Abu Muslim. In the air, Gao Xinji turned his head and saw the figure that stood out from the army behind the huge beast. His pupils constricted, and his expression instantly changed. His heart instantly sank to the bottom of the lake. The person who had intercepted Gao Xinji had an eagle's eyes, a deep nose, and a black cape that flapped in the wind. He was like a demon god from the abyss, and he was nearly 1.9 meters tall. Even amongst the many great generals, he stood out from the rest, his body tall and straight. His disdainful eyes exuded a callous and decisive aura. Anyone who saw him could tell at a glance that he was a man of great skill and daring. But what left the deepest impression was the unique energy exuded by this person. It was the scent of steel and fire. This scent was everywhere, filling every pore of his body, every cell, and even every breath. This was a man who was truly born for battle, a natural-born warrior, a pure soldier, and the most revered, respected, and charismatic leader in the hearts of millions of soldiers. In the entire eastern region of the Arabian Empire, Abu Muslim was probably the only person who possessed this sort of temperament. After patiently waiting for so long, Abu Muslim had finally taken the field. The Tang dynasty had already been in a perilous situation, and now that the Arab commander Abu Muslim had taken the field, the Tang dynasty was in an extremely perilous situation. Gao Xinji, I respect you as a hero, so in this battle, I will personally send you on your way. Abu Muslim's voice was articulate, and as he spoke, a pitch-black fist energy as heavy as a mountain flew through the air, thundering toward Gao Xinji with the speed of a thunderbolt. The moment Abu Muslim punched, a dreadful roar resounded through the air as boundless flames exploded out. Behind Abu Muslim, one could faintly make out the image of a demon god covered in violet-black scales, the hairs of an ox protruding from its body. Behind the gigantic demon god, there was a huge golden-red pillar. The 72 demon god pillars. Abu Muslim was the commander of the army and one of the supreme experts of the Abbasid Caliphate. In his youth, he had been waging war all over the world, and in one of the countries he had conquered that had ties to the Abbasid Caliphate, Abu Muslim had inadvertently obtained a legendary Arabian martial art, the 72 demon god pillars art. In the legends of the Abbasid Caliphate, 72 powerful and terrifying demon gods lived in the sea. They were the enemies of the entire continent, constantly destroying the human world. Later on, the gods sealed them in the 72 demon god pillars and threw them into the depths of the sea. These were the 72 demon god pillars. But even though they had been sealed, the abilities of the 72 demon god pillars had been passed down. This was the powerful 72 demon god pillars art. They had been recorded in 72 secret manuals that had been passed down through the generations of the Abbasid Caliphate. But as the fires of war and the passage of time passed down, a large portion of the 72 demon god pillars art had been lost. But the 72 demon god pillars art that had been passed down through the ages had each possessed astonishing abilities. Each person who had obtained a copy of the 72 demon god pillars art had become an extremely powerful existence in history. If they weren't great generals, they were governors, and they had accomplished incredible feats, becoming legendary existences in Arab history. Chapter 981. The armor Gao Xinji was wearing had been bestowed upon him by the Holy Emperor, and was extremely tough. Even divine weapons would find it very difficult to damage it. In his 10-some years in the western regions, this armor had always protected Gao Xinji, but in the end, it had been destroyed by Abu Muslim. One could easily imagine how powerful Abu Muslim was. Boom! Gao Xinji had already consumed a great deal of his strength to fight against the behemoths, and now that Abu Muslim was in peak condition, he instantly suppressed Gao Xinji. The assault of the 4 behemoths and the 200,000 soldiers was a severe test for the Tang dynasty, and Abu Muslim's appearance was like adding hail to snow, putting the Tang dynasty in an extremely disadvantageous position. On the other side, with Gao Xinji's attack blocked, the giant ape had no more obstacles. Its steely fist smashed down with the weight of Mount Tai at Wang Chong, and no one could help Wang Chong. But Gao Xianji's attack was not completely useless. The giant ape's fist was about to smash down on Wang Chong's head, and in just a moment, Wang Chong would die to the giant ape's fist. Bzz. Suddenly, he heard the explosion of Gao Xianji and Abu Muslim's clash, and he came back to his senses. It's him. The sight of the giant hairy fist, and that hawk-like deep-nosed, muscular, and callous figure behind it made Wang Chong's heart tremble. Rumble! The giant ape's mountainous fist smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Crack! 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 The earth trembled, and countless cracks spread out in all directions. Countless rocks and soil fragments shot out in all directions. The power of that punch was so great that it shocked everyone. Wonderful! Deep underground, Mazel clenched his fists, his eyes shining with bloodthirsty excitement. We finally killed this bastard, the young commander of the Tang dynasty. The bastard who killed his three-headed beast was finally killed by him using the consecrated. At this moment, Mazel felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. Rumble! Under Mazel's command, the giant ape slowly raised its fist, its scarlet eyes sweeping over the ground. Those who dare to oppose me will not have a good ending. Although I can't turn your head into a toilet bowl, it's not bad to enjoy the sight of your crushed body. Deep underground, Mazel's eyes glimmered with excitement. Mazel had many perverted hobbies that no one knew about. Other than bathing in the blood of his opponents underground, Mazel also enjoyed watching them die a miserable death. The stronger an opponent, the higher their status, and the more fiercely they resisted, the more irresistibly attracted Mazel. Wang Chong had killed 3 of his behemoths and dealt a heavy blow to his army. Nothing was more attractive to Mazel than watching him die a miserable death. This was a feast that belonged to him alone. But a moment later, the excitement on Mazel's face froze. The ground that the giant ape had smashed open was empty. There was nothing there. Not even a trace of blood, let alone a corpse. What's going on? Mazel's pupils constricted, and his entire body paled. A moment later, Mazel scanned the ground and noticed a familiar figure. Damn it, how could this be? Mazel's teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to shatter. He had never imagined that at such a close distance, Wang Chong would still be able to escape from the giant ape's attack. A powerful killing intent exploded from his mind. I don't care about anyone else in this war, but you must die. Do you think you can escape? Mazel's heart seethed with killing intent, and without the slightest hesitation, the giant ape leaped forward in pursuit of Wang Chong. While still in the air, the giant ape raised one of its massive arms and smashed down on Wang Chong's head with the weight of Mount Tai. This time, it was even faster and more urgent. Marquis, watch out! Xue Qianjun yelled in the distance. He had already breathed a sigh of relief, but this sight made him tense up once more. The others also cried out in alarm, their faces pale, and their hearts leaping into their throats. Wang Chong was the commander of the 3 armies, the Qixi Protector General, deeply loved and respected by all. If Wang Chong were to be heavily injured or killed in battle, the morale of the army would be dealt a devastating blow. The entire army would instantly crumble. But the giant fist smashed down. Boom! Wang Chong blinked away, leaving behind a series of afterimages, as he once more dodged by a hair. Wang Chong's strength had already reached Tier 8 of the Saint Martial realm, so no matter how powerful the giant ape was, killing Wang Chong would not be an easy task. Die! 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 Deep underground, Mazel was at first dazed, and then his eyes went red with rage. The more Wang Chong dodged, the more intense the killing intent in his heart became. I don't believe that you can dodge once, but you can dodge 100 times, 1,000 times. Roar! The behemoth roared as Mazel controlled the giant ape to unleash a barrage of attacks, its 2 thick arms swinging up and down like wheels against Wang Chong. But not even Mazel realized that as he dodged the giant ape's attacks, Wang Chong's eyes were growing clearer and clearer, his expression more determined. I can't retreat. I can't retreat. A voice rumbled in Wang Chong's mind, and it was getting louder and louder. The Tang dynasty can't lose. There has to be hope. The wind howled in his ears, the air rushing past his armor and hissing like swords. Wang Chong could hear the screams of the army, the panicked cries of the soldiers retreating, the gurgling of blood into the earth, the snapping of swords and banners. Other than the last battle of his life, Wang Chong had never faced such a predicament. Opening his eyes, Wang Chong saw the fierce battle in the air between Abu Muslim and Gao Xianji. The former Anqi war god was now in dire straits. Nearby, the bearded deputy governor of the Tang dynasty Ziad was also engaged in a fierce battle with Cheng Qianli. Countless cracks had appeared on Cheng Qianli's supreme desolation god, and the stellar energy chains were also covered in cracks. Even more shocking was that the pitch-black supreme desolation god was slowly becoming translucent. This was a sign that the avatar had run out of energy and was about to crumble. The battle between Ziad and the behemoth had inflicted heavy casualties on the Anqi Protectorate army. Without the support of the Anqi Protectorate army, even Cheng Qianli's supreme desolation god would find it difficult to hold out. Wang Chong run. All of a sudden, a thunderous roar reverberated through the surroundings. As he was fighting with Arab Deputy Governor Ziad, Cheng Qianli's supreme desolation god suddenly turned his head to look at Wang Chong, his eyes brimming with anxiety and urgency. The Tang dynasty had already lost this battle. Whether they were willing or not, this was a fact. Whether it was in terms of numbers or the behemoths, the Arabs had far surpassed the limits of what the Tang dynasty could resist. The Tang dynasty should be relocating its soldiers and preserving its strength. Wang Chong, hurry! Cheng Qianli's eyes were on the verge of bleeding. Everything had a price, and he and the Protector General could no longer escape. Right now, the only person capable of leading the army out of this place was Wang Chong. He should not have appeared here in the first place. The Qixi Protectorate had come here to save them. Only the Anqi Protectorate army could bring up the rear. Moreover, both he and Gao Xianji were soldiers, and they were no longer young. But Wang Chong was different. He was still too young, only 17, but the intelligence, strategy, ability and talent he had displayed had already reached the pinnacle, a level that even he and Gao Xianji had to sigh in admiration. If he could survive, Wang Chong would have limitless possibilities. The Tang dynasty would also have limitless possibilities. This was why he and Gao Xianji had instantly made the decision to sacrifice themselves. If only one person could survive, Wang Chong was the best choice. Rumble! Unknowingly, a huge thunderbolt split the sky like an axe and swept through the clouds. At some point, dark clouds had begun to gather in the sky, and all of Talas was trembling under the weight of the thunder. Buzz! The moment the lightning bolt struck, Wang Chong raised his head and swiftly took action. His body swayed, but he did not retreat. Instead, he suddenly flew toward the giant ape that he could not see the end of. Wang Chong! Protector General Wang! Cries of alarm came from both Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli. Neither of them had expected that not only would Wang Chong not retreat, he would actually charge at the behemoths. But at this moment, Wang Chong could hear nothing. Retreat meant death, an abyss of eternal damnation. No matter what, he would not retreat. Ha! With a loud bellow, Wang Chong leaped up the giant ape's arm like a tiny ant. Still in the air, he swung his Wuxia steel sword, unleashing a blazing white sword Qi Tensum Zhonglong. As it swayed through the air, it turned from white to violet and cut into the giant ape's body. In this attack, Wang Chong had actually added the characteristics of the strength of Lu Wu to the art of god and demon obliteration. Awah! The giant ape howled in grief as it drew back its arm, its body trembling in pain. Those scarlet eyes that had been brimming with cruelty and savagery were now thrown into chaos. Boom! As Wang Chong stood on the shattered earth and stared at the howling giant ape, he suddenly punched. Something's wrong. Chapter 982. Bezisti. Buzz. As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Chong suddenly stopped dodging and stood motionless on the spot. Boom! A black fist several times larger than Wang Chong did not strike at Wang Chong. Instead, it smashed into an area 6 to 7 zhang away, triggering a massive explosion. Bang! A boulder the size of a millstone and covered in sharp edges smashed toward Wang Chong. When it was still 1 zhang away, it was stopped by an invisible wall of stellar energy and fell to the ground. Something's wrong. Wang Chong still stood there, as if he had seen nothing and felt nothing. At this moment, a few thoughts flashed through his mind, but in his haste, he couldn't grasp onto anything. Boom! Explosions filled the air as the giant ape punched again, landing several dozen feet away from Wang Chong. Wang Chong could sense that the giant ape that had been relentlessly pursuing him had lost all its hatred, as if it had lost its target. Damn it! What was that violet flame? Deep underground, Mazel clenched his teeth, a hint of shock in his eyes as he quickly regained control over the consecrated. In the blink of an eye, the giant ape's eyes regained their savagery and cruelty, and it swung another fist at Wang Chong. This time, there was no deviation, and it smashed straight toward Wang Chong's head. Boom! Stone and dust flew into the air, but this time, the giant ape missed. Wang Chong managed to dodge the giant ape's fist by a hair. This time, he ignored the giant ape and flew toward the battlefield, toward the place where the behemoths were the most ferocious, and the Arabs were the most numerous. As he flew, Wang Chong's eyes scanned the battlefield again and again. The feeling in his mind was getting stronger and stronger, like something was on the verge of emerging, but it was still lacking something. No, that's not right at all. There must be something I overlooked. The giant beasts must have a weakness. They only appeared for a short period of time before disappearing. There must be a reason. A thunderous voice boomed in Wang Chong's mind. What is this heathen trying to do? Does he really think he can stop my 3 giant beasts by himself? Deep underground, Mazel was also struck dumb by Wang Chong's sudden action. But Mazel quickly came back to his senses. Struggling and struggling at death's door. In the end, you still have to die. Although Mazel wasn't very strong, he was deep underground, and with the help of his centipede monster, no one could harm him. With 4 top-notch giant beasts, there was nothing that could go against him. Even great generals had to bow their heads. On the surface, Wang Chong had no idea what was going on. His eyes were constantly scanning the battlefield, and when he saw the giant white bear behemoth in the northwest, Wang Chong's eyes suddenly focused. The massive white bear behemoth had been wreaking havoc in the direction of Talas, and just when it was about to charge into the Arab army coming from the rear, the white bear suddenly changed its direction, lunging forward. On this battlefield of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, the white bear behemoth's movement was extremely subtle and inconspicuous. If Wang Chong hadn't been paying close attention, he would have never noticed it. Something's wrong. The feeling in Wang Chong's mind intensified. Buzz! As his eyes flitted past the center of the defense line, the fire-breathing lizard, and the powerful behemoth, Wang Chong once more noticed something unusual. The 2 Arabian behemoths continued to wreak havoc as they advanced. At some point, the 2 behemoths had deviated from their original path, and were getting closer and closer to each other. But a moment later, as the 2 behemoths were getting closer and closer to each other, it was like an invisible rope had been tied to their bodies and pulled them back. The 2 behemoths that had originally been on the verge of colliding with each other suddenly turned their heads and returned to their original path, continuing to advance in a straight line without getting too far away from each other. Wang Chong's eyes widened, and the feeling in his mind intensified to the extreme. Roar! The giant ape bellowed, its pitch-black body as sturdy as a diamond. Without even thinking, it unleashed an earth-shattering punch at Wang Chong. Strangely, Wang Chong was standing on the ground. Given the giant ape's height, its eyes should have been looking at the ground when it attacked. Although the giant ape's arm had come down, its scarlet eyes were not looking at the ground. It gave off the feeling that its body and mind were in complete disharmony, as if they were being controlled. Bang! As this final thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind, his body trembled. At this moment, he suddenly realized what was wrong. These 4 behemoths were in a state of complete control. The behemoths were acting on instinct. In other words, whether it was the Tang people or the Arabs, they were all the same in their eyes. The behemoths would never change direction after discovering that the Arabs were in front of them. Similarly, a behemoth moving on instinct would never move in a straight line. Not even the giant ape would make the low-level mistake of having its hands and eyes out of coordination. It was more like someone else was controlling it. Once could be a coincidence, twice could be a coincidence, and 3 times was inevitable. The behavior of these 4 behemoths was abnormal. Psychic energy. As this thought flashed through Wang Chang's mind, he seemed to understand something. If a person wanted to control another creature, especially a gigantic beast that was so huge and powerful that it seemed to be able to topple mountains and overturn seas, it was impossible to do so with just Gang Qi. There was only one way to control a creature with such a huge body, and that was mental power. How could it appear here? The calamity hasn't even descended, so how could someone possess such enormous psychic energy? To think that someone could use psychic energy to control such a massive creature. Wang Chang's mind was in turmoil. In this world where martial arts reigned supreme, everyone cultivated stellar energy. Powerful martial artists could be found everywhere in this world, but existences with powerful psychic energy were few and far between. Wang Chong had only seen psychic energy on a few of the otherworldly invaders before the calamity. Psychic energy was formless and difficult to attack, but the psychic energy of these people was so condensed that it could actually injure top-class martial artists and even control the best generals under Wang Chang's command. However, this was an ability that only the foreign invaders possessed. All of the human warriors had slowly come to understand this ability in the process of fighting against them, and they had also developed a similar method of mental resistance. But the calamity had yet to descend, and the apocalypse was still several years away. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would encounter a powerful existence that could use psychic energy to control the behemoths. Just what's going on here? Why does the Arabian Empire have such a powerful psychic energy expert? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. This discovery had completely overturned everything he knew. Martial artists would find it very difficult to contend against powerful psychic energy experts, unless they could find their true bodies. As this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he quickly came up with an idea. Reincarnation had made Wang Chong different from other martial artists. Although his martial arts had not yet reached the peak of the Saint martial realm, his psychic energy was at the war saint level. Bang! In a flash, Wang Chong once more dodged the giant ape's attack. At the same time, Wang Chong formed a strange seal with his left hand. A moment later, majestic psychic energy surged out of his brow and swept through the air like a tide. At first, Wang Chong hadn't noticed anything. There was nothing in the air. But a moment later, when the giant ape retracted its arm and scanned the air with its scarlet eyes, Wang Chong sensed an extremely secretive ripple of psychic energy pass through the giant ape's body and vanish without a trace. If not for the fact that Wang Chong had been searching this entire time, he would have never noticed it. Over there. Wang Chong immediately turned his gaze in the direction the psychic energy ripple had vanished. But when he saw the source of that psychic energy ripple, even though Wang Chong had been prepared, he couldn't help but grimace. The source of that psychic energy ripple was actually on the ground. Down. How could this be? Wang Chong was stunned. He had guessed that this psychic energy expert was nearby, perhaps even hidden amongst the Arab army, but he had never imagined that this psychic energy expert would be hiding underground. This was truly unexpected and left him flabbergasted. With Wang Chong's Tier 8 Saint martial strength, no matter where his opponent was on the ground, even if they were in the air, Wang Chong would still be able to attack them. But if they were underground, not even someone of Wang Chong's abilities would be able to do so. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly heard cries of alarm at his ears. Hurry and save General. In shock, Wang Chong turned his head and immediately saw the distant Chen Shusun. Chen Shusun's face was pale, and his eyes were fixed on the sky, a look of deep despair on his face. Following his gaze, Wang Chong immediately saw a massive golden armored god in front of him. The armor on the golden armored god's body had been completely shattered, and his entire body had a dim expression. In front of him, a giant red lizard was opening its mouth, releasing a destructive power that was even more intense than the sun. The lizard was about to spit out a ball of flames that was even more destructive than the sun. Its target was the already off-balance golden armored god. Chapter 983. Father. Wang Chang's mind reeled in shock. He had been focused on the battlefield this entire time, pondering how to deal with the behemoth. He had never imagined that his father, the mighty miracle god, would be forced into such dire straits in such a short time. But from such a distance, not even someone of Wang Chang's strength could come to his aid in such a short time. Ha 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 die. Underground, Mazel was madly laughing. He had never been one to be easily satisfied. In this operation, besides the young Tang commander, the other 3 Tang commanders were also his targets. Killing several enemy great general-level commanders had always been a game and hobby of his that he never got tired of. If he could kill that young man and the Tang dynasty commanders at the same time, nothing could be better for Mazel. Kid, first kill these Tang people for me. Deep underground, Mazel controlled the burning one to spit out a lava-like flame. 100 zhang, 200 zhang. The flames rapidly expanded. And just when it seemed like Wang Yan was about to be heavily injured by the burning one's flames, something completely unexpected occurred. Bang! A majestic bolt of psychic energy shot forward, striking the burning one as well as the psychic energy that Mazel had attached to the burning one. Father! Only now did Wang Chang's shout come from the distance. Not even Mazel had expected that in his panic, Wang Chong would almost instinctively unleash his psychic energy and attack the burning one in its purest form. Hong, the burning gold and surging sea of lava that could even melt rocks suddenly trembled and abruptly deviated from its original direction. With the force of a thunderbolt, it abruptly smashed onto the ground 100 feet away from Wang Yan. At almost the same time, Wang Chang's boundless psychic energy shattered the strand of psychic energy that Mazel had left on the burning one. The world fell silent. Mazel's eyes were wide open as he sat on the head of the centipede monster, dumbstruck. How could this be? Mazel's mind was raging with great waves of shock. Even though only a sliver of the psychic energy attached to the burning one had been destroyed, this was no less than a massive earthquake to Mazel. At this moment, Mazel would not have been so shocked even if his 4 strongest behemoths had been slain in front of him. As everyone knew, there were very few mind power masters in this world. The probability of 2 equally powerful mind power masters meeting on the battlefield was not impossible, but it was close to 0. Could it be that there are also top-notch psyche masters among these heathens? Impossible. This was impossible. How could such a thing happen? Mazel's mind was in turmoil. Wang Chang's psychic energy had dealt him an unprecedented blow. Coincidence? It must be a coincidence. Mazel clenched his teeth, but he quickly came to his senses. As the leader of the Arabian behemoth army, he had been bestowed many psychic energy tools by the caliph, and as a priest, he had obtained an ancient legacy, allowing him to possess such powerful psychic energy. No matter how strong a normal martial artist was, they would never be able to compare. No, almost no martial artist could match up to him in terms of spiritual power. He could not believe it. This had to be a mistake. Burning one. Attack. Mazel's mind screeched as he communicated with the burning one on the ground. Chonga. On the fierce battlefield, Wang Yan's mighty miracle god slowly withdrew his gaze from the blazing lava and subconsciously turned to Wang Chong behind him. The fiery giant lizard's attack was extremely powerful. Wherever the flames passed, the rocks were all melted, leaving behind a huge pit with a diameter of more than 100 feet. The pit was charred black, and smoke was constantly rising from it. The fiery lizard's attack had missed. Such a thing had never happened before. Although he didn't know what had happened, Wang Yan was sure that this matter had something to do with Wang Chong. In the distance, Wang Chong could clearly sense Wang Yan's gaze, and he was even more shocked than his father. Although he was the war saint and possessed abnormally powerful psychic energy, Wang Chong had never had a chance to test it. This was Wang Chong's first time clashing with a powerful psychic energy expert on a large-scale battlefield. In that moment, Wang Chong had almost instinctively released his psychic energy, but he truly hadn't expected it to have any effect. Roar! A roar came from next to him, and at the same time, he heard cries of alarm from the crowd. "My lord! Careful! Not good! That behemoth is about to spit fire again." The crowd on the battlefield was in a panic. Wang Chang's heart tightened as he turned his head, and saw that the behemoth was crouching on all fours, its throat bulging as it began to spit out flames much thicker than before. Rumble! As Wang Chong and Wang Yin looked over, the behemoth spat out another attack, this one much stronger than before. Buzz! There was no time to think. A majestic bolt of psychic energy erupted from between Wang Chong's brows, piercing through the air to strike the distant fiery lizard. Boom! Nothing happened, but Wang Chong felt like he had struck a steel wall. Within the body of the fiery lizard, Wang Chong could clearly sense a sinister and cold psychic energy that also exuded a thick aura of darkness. A psychic energy expert. Although he couldn't see anything, Wang Chong was sure that this was the psychic energy expert controlling all the behemoths from behind the curtains. "Brat, just where did you come from?" Mazel's furious roar resounded in Wang Chong's mind. "I'm going to kill your people," Wang Chong sneered, and then another enormous surge of psychic energy, even stronger than before, erupted from Wang Chong's brow. The two psychic energies fused into one and slammed into the dark and sinister psychic barrier. Rumble! Mazel's psychic energy was once more pulverized. Boom! At almost the same time, the magma spewed out by the giant burning one seemed to be struck by an invisible force. It deviated once more and spat out more than 100 meters away from Wang Yin, scorching the ground. "Retreat! Pass on my order! All soldiers retreat!" Wang Yin ordered, but he himself remained unmoving. Although he didn't know what had happened or how Wang Chong had done it, the current situation was undoubtedly extremely advantageous to the Tang dynasty. The best chance to cover the retreat of the army. In order to cover the retreat of the army, Wang Yan's infantry had suffered grievous losses. Rumble! The moment Wang Yin gave the order, the Tang dynasty infantry began to retreat. Even as they retreated, they maintained strict order and formation. On the other side, the Burning One's two missed shots had caused far more changes. In the air, even Abu Muslim and Ziyad, the two Arab governors engaged in fierce battle, noticed this anomaly. Although the behemoths were not as intelligent as humans, their instincts were extremely terrifying, not one bit inferior to the supreme experts of the martial path. The fiery lizard primarily breathed fire, and when it did so, it was not only extremely fast, but also extremely accurate. Two missed shots in a row was not normal. In that instant, both of them frowned deeply. But the behemoth army had always been a force outside of their control, a force directly under the caliph of the Arabian Empire. Not even Abu Muslim knew anything about its secrets. Thus, he had no way of knowing what had happened to the behemoth. At this moment, no one was more shocked than Mazel, seated cross-legged on the head of the centipede monster. Wang Chong's psychic energy strike had struck him like a magnitude 12 earthquake. Mazel's entire body was in a state of shock. Psychic energy expert. Psychic energy expert. He really is a psychic energy expert. Mazel's eyes were on the verge of popping out of their sockets. He had been deceiving himself the first time, believing that two powerful psychic energy experts could not appear on the same battlefield at the same time. But the second time, Wang Chong's psychic energy strike had shattered all his hopes. How could there be such a thing? Just how old is this brat? Just how old is he? How could he have such powerful psychic energy? I don't believe it. I can't believe it. Mazel inwardly roared. Psychic energy, like martial arts, relied on ancient legacies. And because this was a world of martial arts, the legacies of psychic energy were even more ancient and vast than those of martial arts. Almost no one with powerful psychic energy was young. Mazel was a genius. Although he was born with a hunched back and an ugly appearance, his psychic energy was abnormally powerful. Very few people in the Arabian Empire could contend against him, which was why he was able to raise the behemoth army. In this aspect, even the governor of Iron and Blood of the Eastern War Zone would have to admit that he was inferior. It was precisely because of this rare talent that Mazel was able to hold an important position in the Arabian Empire, where martial strength reigned supreme, that he was valued by the caliph. But now, Mazel had encountered another powerful psychic energy expert, one much younger than him. This completely overturned Mazel's understanding of psychic energy experts. This world can't have so many powerful psychic energy experts. I alone will be enough. Everyone else must die. Infidel, you must die. No matter what price I have to pay, you must remain here today. Mazel inwardly bellowed. Before, Mazel had only wanted to kill Wang Chong out of selfishness, because of the 3 behemoths he had spent so much effort raising. But now Mazel's killing intent for Wang Chong had reached its peak. Mazel could even ignore Gao Xianji, Cheng Qianli, and Wang Yan, whom he had previously wanted dead. Chapter 984. Roar. Chapter 976. Battle. Roar. The Burning One, the Reaper, and the Consecrated all roared at the same time, their scarlet eyes staring viciously at Wang Chong, who was standing on a protruding rock amidst countless corpses. Bang bang bang. Dust churned and the earth quaked. At almost the same time, the 4 behemoths lowered their bodies and roared as they lunged at Wang Chong from all directions. As they lunged, they also launched swift attacks. Flames more dazzling than the sun appeared at the Burning One's throat, and with a squelch they flew through the air. But this time, their target was not Wang Chong, but the bloodstained Wang Chong. Cries of alarm could be heard from all around. Let alone the Tang. Even the tens of thousands of Arab cavalry on the ground noticed this abnormal sight, all of them glancing at each other, confused as to what was going on. In the air, Abu Muslim and Ziyad glanced at each other, their brows tightly furrowed. This was not part of the plan at all. The actions of the 4 behemoths had completely exceeded the scope of a normal military attack. This was not what Abu Muslim had expected. What is this bastard Mazel doing? Abu Muslim's mind was burning with rage. Military orders were like mountains. As the commander-in-chief of the army and the illustrious governor of Iron and Blood, Abu Muslim had always been known for his iron fist, callousness, and strict discipline. No matter which famous general or general under his command, no matter what background or ability they had, even Deputy Governor Ziyad, no one dared to defy his orders. But in the current situation, it was clear that Mazel had mobilized 4 elite behemoths and acted on his own, causing Abu Muslim to instinctively feel displeased. But in the end, Abu Muslim was not someone who couldn't endure. Moreover, the Tang dynasty's defense line had been broken, and its collapse was a foregone conclusion. Given this, Abu Muslim would not lower himself to Mazel's level for the time being. Is it because of that brat? Abu Muslim narrowed his eyes as he followed the 4 behemoths to the distant Wang Chong. In a flash, Abu Muslim seemed to understand something, but there was no time to think. Abu Muslim's body trembled with black energy as he attacked Gao Xianji with all his might. Abu Muslim's desire to kill Wang Chong was no less than Mazel's. But before that, Abu Muslim first had to deal with Gao Xianji, the core of the Anqi Protectorate army. Bang! 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 In midair, the 2 figures were as fast as lightning, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the void as they continuously clashed against each other. On the other side of the boulder, Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he saw the 4 behemoths lunging at him, and he swiftly took action. Boom! Boundless psychic energy swept out and collided with the 4 behemoths. In a flash, Wang Chong and Mazel had once more collided. Wang Chong felt a soundless tremor in his mind, and on the other side, the consciousness that Mazel had attached to the 4 behemoths seemed to be swept away by a gale and pulverized. The 4 behemoths that had been lunging at Wang Chong suddenly froze, confusion appearing in their scarlet eyes. All of them were at a loss for what to do, only able to take stock of their surroundings in a daze. As expected, at this sight, Wang Chong immediately understood. This was the first time in Wang Chong's life that he had engaged in a battle with a powerful psychic energy master. The first time, Wang Chong had been fighting on instinct, but after 3 exchanges, Wang Chong was getting more and more proficient in using psychic energy. Now he had vaguely understood something. Perhaps this war was far from over. Wang Chong sensed that if he wanted to change the outcome of the Battle of Talas, he had grasped an extremely crucial key. Bastard! I'm going to die from anger. Deep underground, Mazel's lungs were about to explode from anger. As the commander of the behemoth army, Mazel had never failed in controlling the behemoths, but 3 times in a row, he had been stopped by this youth from the Tang dynasty. Mazel had a powerful psychic energy, but he couldn't use it at all. It was like he had encountered his nemesis. Impossible. I can't lose to a brat who hasn't even grown his hair yet. Mazel's killing intent burned hotter and hotter. Boom. Psychic energy condensed into a sharp awl that pierced through the earth toward Wang Chong. Darkness thrust. As the commander of the behemoth army, Mazel had inherited an extremely powerful psychic art from the priest of the Arabian Empire. It could easily obliterate a person's soul, and Mazel had once used this dark stab to kill many enemy generals. Even those great generals would suffer severe mental injuries from Mazel's attacks. In the field of psychic energy, the hideous Mazel was undoubtedly a grandmaster. Boom! Mazel's darkness thrust was like a sharp sword that stabbed into Wang Chong's mind. But a moment later, the psychic domain exploded with a heaven-rending boom. Mazel suddenly realized that his darkness thrust seemed to have struck the world's sturdiest psychic barrier, instantly dispersing into nothingness. Moreover, what shocked Mazel the most was that he sensed an unprecedented soul in that young man's body, one that was completely different from any Mazel had ever seen. This soul was powerful and exuded a bizarre feeling. In Mazel's perception, it was like there were several souls layered on top of each other. This was a bizarre situation, but it was also perfect and harmonious. Mazel had never seen such a complicated soul before. Brat, just who are you? Mazel said in shock. Wang Chong was also rather surprised. This psychic energy expert hiding behind the curtains was far more formidable than he had imagined. He seemed to have noticed something that had never happened before. But a moment later, Wang Chong came back to his senses. No one could discover the secret of the Stone of Destiny. As for Mazel's psychic attack, Wang Chong could even endure death, let alone a trifling psychic attack. Haha, don't say such meaningless words. I've already discovered your position. You controlled the behemoths to kill so many of my men. Do you think you can escape? Wang Chong coldly chuckled. Mazel should not have used this sort of psychic attack. Previously, although Wang Chong knew that he was underground, he had no way of determining his exact location. But now, Mazel's attack on Wang Chong had allowed Wang Chong to grasp his weakness and find his exact location. What? Deep underground? Mazel was flabbergasted to hear these words. Before Mazel had time to think, he sensed an enormous tide of psychic energy erupting from the ground. What made Mazel pale the most was that this tide of psychic energy began to transform midway, fusing together into a sharp cone. It was the same as Mazel's darkness stab. Boom! Wang Chong's psychic energy attack thundered through the ground and slammed into Mazel's body. There was a soundless tremor in their minds. On the ground, Wang Chong, who was standing on the boulder, clearly swayed. Underground, 2 streams of blood flowed from Mazel's nostrils. In a simple clash of psychic energy, Mazel did not fear Wang Chong. But unlike a Saint Martial Tier 8 expert like Wang Chong, Mazel's body was far weaker. This psychic energy attack had left his blood in turmoil and his body injured. Impossible! How could there be such a thing? He managed to learn my technique so quickly. Mazel's entire body trembled, his heart chilled. His injuries were secondary to the fact that Wang Chong had been able to use his own technique to counterattack. This was something that Mazel found unacceptable and fearful. Wang Chong clearly did not know the darkness stab, or else he would not have used such a primitive method to attack. But for someone to learn another psychic energy technique in such a short amount of time, comprehend it, and use it in actual combat, this sort of talent far surpassed Mazel's imagination. In Mazel's understanding, this was impossible. Even if he was a genius, he did not have this sort of ability. Kill. 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 Brat, I'll definitely kill you. Mazel's mind was in a mess. He had always been conceited, but Wang Chong's existence was a massive blow to him. Boom boom boom. Without the slightest hesitation, Mazel gathered his psychic energy into countless sharp needles that shot toward Wang Chong. Come. On the ground, Wang Chong stood on the boulder, his expression cold and fearless. This Arab psychic energy expert was truly formidable. But no matter how formidable, his psychic energy attacks could not compare to the world constraint. Without the slightest hesitation, vast waves of psychic energy erupted from Wang Chong's brow and surged through the earth toward Mazel. And it was even more vicious than Mazel's. This was the first major defeat of Wang Chong's life. The thick stench of blood in the air, and the countless corpses and severed limbs on the ground were all stabbing at Wang Chong's heart. There was no question that the Tang dynasty had suffered today's defeat because of the four behemoths, and that mysterious psychic energy expert hidden deep underground. Abu Muslim and his 200,000 Arab cavalry alone would have never possessed this sort of strength. Chapter 985. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Deep underground, just 300 feet below the surface, two powerful mental powers violently collided with each other like raging dragons. Two completely different kinds of psychic energies, one cold and sinister, clashed and clashed. Although they did not have the boundless vibrations of stellar energy like martial artists, nor did they have the dreadful power to rend the earth and sky apart, they were far more dangerous. A battle of psychic energies of this level was enough to make even great generals pale in comparison. The two clashed again and again, and both Wang Chong and Mazel's psychic energy had been severely injured in this battle. Wang Chong stood on the boulder, and though he seemed unmoving, his face was ghastly pale. But in the end, Wang Chong was still a Saint Martial Tier 8 expert. In comparison, Mazel had suffered far more severe injuries. Mazel was not just bleeding from his nose. His eyes, ears, and even his bulging back were bleeding. He was in an extremely wretched state. Bastard! No matter what, I'll kill you. Mazel bared his fangs and brandished his claws, his entire body on the verge of madness. Mazel had such an esteemed status that all the nobles, governors, and generals had to treat him with respect. In the Arabian Empire, no one except the caliph could order him around. Even Abu Muslim was only acting on the caliph's orders. If not for the caliph, Mazel could have just turned around and left. Not even Abu Muslim, the governor of the East, could order him around. But now, Mazel had been reduced to such a sorry state by an Eastern infidel. This was the ultimate humiliation. Buzz! Without the slightest hesitation, Mazel's eyes exploded with hatred as he controlled his centipede monster to plunge deeper into the ground. Wang Chong's eyes narrowed and his eyelids twitched. Mazel's performance had completely exceeded his expectations. However, Wang Chong quickly understood that mental strength was not limitless. The further the distance, the weaker the effect of a mental strength attack. It was obvious that the other party had suffered a loss in the fight against him, and wanted to avoid the battle, increase the distance between them, and escape from his attack range. However, Wang Chong did not give chase. The underground was a forbidden zone for martial artists. Without special methods, it would be very difficult to sneak underground and attack such a strange opponent. This was obviously something the other party had considered from the very beginning. Most psychic power users were physically weak, and without special life-saving measures, they would not easily go to the front lines. The most important thing now is to find a way to deal with these four giant beasts. Wang Chong stood on top of a boulder, his clothes and hair fluttering in the wind. He was anxious, but he didn't show it on his face. The army was in an extremely perilous situation. Abu Muslim and Ziyad, two of the highest Arab commanders, had already taken action. Just the threat of these two people was enough to suffocate everyone. Moreover, there were four behemoths capable of destroying the heavens. As Wang Chong thought this, his eyes quickly focused on the four behemoths. I originally didn't want to use this technique. Brat, you forced my hand. Mazel's voice once more resounded in Wang Chong's mind. A ripple of psychic energy more majestic and powerful than Wang Chong had ever felt before shot out of the ground. But its target was not Wang Chong, but the giant ape. Wang, in an instant, That tremendous mental power rapidly sank into the giant ape's body and disappeared. Wang Chong was flabbergasted by the abrupt start of the battle. He had originally believed that the other party was avoiding the battle, but it now appeared that this was not the case at all. In just a few moments, the battle between Wang Chong and Mazel had undergone a massive transformation. Roar! Several dozen zhang behind Wang Chong. The consecrated's long fur stood on end and danced in the air. It opened its bloody maw, revealing its savage fangs, its entire body seething with flames that seemed capable of devouring the heavens and devouring the earth like the tide of the sea. Foul brat, you're dead for sure. I'll swallow you alive. Mazel's voice came out of the ground, and after saying this he vanished. Deep underground plush. Mazel vomited a mouthful of blood onto the head of the centipede monster beneath him. His expression had greatly deteriorated, and his face had grown even older and uglier. The Behemoth Fusion Art. This was another psychic energy art recorded on the ancient Behemoth papyrus. It was used in conjunction with the behemoths, and only Arab priests with powerful psychic energy had the ability to use it. In that extremely developed ancient empire, even these behemoths would occasionally encounter extremely powerful opponents. The Behemoth Fusion Art was used to destroy these powerful opponents. Using this psychic energy art not only had a very low chance of success, but failure would also result in a severe backlash, even death. And even if one succeeded, they would have to pay an enormous price. Not only would their soul feel like it was being torn apart, their psychic energy would be greatly weakened, and their lifespan would be greatly shortened. Thus, all the Arab priests were extremely cautious. If not for the fact that psychic energy experts were incompatible with each other, and that Wang Chong's display of psychic energy made Mazel feel extremely threatened, he would never have used the Behemoth Fusion Art. Damn it! To make me pay such a heavy price, losing 10 years of my lifespan, I'll tear you to pieces. You'll pay an even greater price than I did. Mazel's eyes shone with loathing, and he quickly lowered his head, at the same time connecting his psychic energy to the giant ape on the ground. Bang! The sky darkened as a massive fist the size of a mountain smashed toward Wang Chong. It was the same punch from the giant ape, but its speed and power were on a completely different level. Rumble! The earth quaked and countless stones flew several dozen zhang into the air. Black energy even began to seep out of the giant ape's fur-covered fist. The space where the giant ape had smashed down began to twist and blur. What's going on here? How did it suddenly become so fast? Wang Chong had managed to dodge the giant ape's attack by a hair, but he was inwardly alarmed. This giant ape had pursued him before, but neither its speed nor strength had been as terrifying as it was now. If Wang Chong hadn't reacted so quickly and used his psychic energy to keep an eye on his surroundings, he would have already been struck. Not only that, when Wang Chong turned his head to look at the colossus behind him, Wang Chong could sense that the giant ape's body had transformed into an invisible vortex of darkness, and origin energy was surging in from all around it. With the support of the chi of heaven and earth, the giant ape's strength continued to grow. Even its size seemed to be growing. A hint of shock finally appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. He had never known that these behemoths could grow in this manner. This was already somewhat similar to martial artists. Die for me! Mazel's psychic energy rippled once more, but this time, it did not come from underground, but from the giant ape's body. Boom! Under Mazel's control, the giant ape unleashed another swift and agile punch. At this moment, Mazel was no longer Mazel. He was the giant ape, and the giant ape was him. And Wang Chong was just an insignificant ant standing in front of it. Rumble! The Behemoth Fusion Art. After successfully using this ancient secret art, Mazel immediately unleashed a flurry of attacks on Wang Chong. At this moment, the giant ape's strength had more than doubled. Other than allowing the user to control the behemoth fusion art also had an even greater effect. It could gather the origin energy in a radius of several hundred li and strengthen the behemoth. The longer it took, the stronger the behemoth would become, until it reached an unimaginable level. Marquee run! Cries of alarm came from the distance. The transformation of the behemoth caused Chen Burang, Sun Jiming, and even Li Sai's group to pale. In everyone's understanding, the strongest martial artists of the world were undoubtedly the great generals who stood at the apex of power and authority. But even the strongest great generals would pale in comparison to this giant ape, much less Wang Chong, who was at St. Martial Tier 8. Roar! The giant ape's roar made everyone tremble in fear. Its frenzied attacks had completely destroyed the surrounding earth veins. As for Wang Chong, he was dodging left and right amid the giant ape's attacks. It seemed like he was in a perilous situation and could lose his life at any moment. No. If this continues, Marquis will die. In his current state, he can't deal with the behemoth. Sun Jiming anxiously said. Wang Chong was the person he respected the most, the person he wanted to learn from and emulate. If not for Wang Chong, he would still be a servant of Deng Mingxin and the Deng clan, suffering all their insults and humiliation. A true man should be like Marquis, protecting the common people, achieving great feats, and resisting foreign kingdoms. This was the kind of breadth of mind and boldness that Sun Jiming admired and yearned for. No matter what, Marquis can't die here. Sun Jiming's heart was filled with worry. Hiya! Sun Jiming slapped the back of his horse and prepared to charge toward Wang Chong. It's useless. Marquis won't leave. Chapter 986. Jiming, you know Marquis' style. Given Marquis' strength, nothing can stop him if he wants to escape. Not even the Arabs or that giant ape. It's not that he can't escape, but that he won't. Haven't you realized it yet? Marquis is using this method to draw the attention of the four behemoths and reduce the casualties of the army. Buzz! Sun Jiming's body trembled at Chen Burang's words, and his footsteps came to a screeching halt. Jiming, this is Marquis' choice. If it were just for safety, he wouldn't have donated all his wealth and risked his life to go to the southwest when everyone else had given up. And he certainly wouldn't have appeared here. He didn't retreat in the southwest, and he certainly won't retreat today. This is Marquis' decision. You know that no one can change it. Chen Burang sternly said. He also wanted to save Marquis. How many people in the world could be like Marquis, truly caring for his country and the world? But Chen Burang also knew that the army at Talas had been routed, and that there was no other choice. Marquis had decided to take on this burden, and no one could change this. Sun Jiming's face turned ghastly pale, and he clenched his fists, but in the end, he did not take another step forward. After a long while, he finally turned his head in another direction. On the other side, Wang Chong was paying no attention to anything else. His attention was completely focused on the giant ape before him, whose strength had greatly increased. Rumble! Countless rocks and the air around him were instantly transformed into the fiercest of explosives, under the furious bombardment of the giant ape. Wang Chong left afterimages in the air as he dodged and dodged. The sharp rocks were constantly hurtling toward him, but they were all blocked by Wang Chong's stellar energy. There has to be a way. Wang Chong leaped and dodged the giant ape's attack. He raised his head in midair, his pitch-black pupils reflecting the gigantic creature above him. At that moment, Wang Chong thought of many things. Countless martial arts and spells, as vast as the sea, continuously rushed through his mind. Boom! While he was thinking, a powerful spiritual wave shot out from the depths of his brow and struck the giant ape like a heavy hammer. Ha ha ha, it's useless. Do you think it's the same as before? Now, I no longer have any weaknesses. Your spirit is not as strong as mine. And now, even your strength is not as strong as mine. Ha ha ha. Mazel heartily laughed, not bothering to conceal his disdain. Although the beast fusion technique required a huge price, it was all worth it. Previously, he was afraid of this heretic's strength, but now he was just an ant in his eyes. Mazel could easily toy with him. The air whistled as Mazel controlled the giant ape's body and smugly punched. The war was already won, and this psychic energy expert of the Tang dynasty was a fish on the chopping block, waiting to be slaughtered. Boom! There was no ripple in Wang Chong's eyes, but as Mazel spoke, he sent another psychic energy spear at the giant ape. It can't be wrong. The weakness of these behemoths is psychic energy. Although the behemoths have massive bodies and inconceivably powerful bodies, psychic energy cannot be nurtured. Their greatest weakness must be their mental power. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. His body made a turn in midair and quickly landed on the ground. Then his feet didn't touch the ground as he leaped forward, dodging another attack from the giant ape by a hair's breadth. Bzzz. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong fired another psychic energy attack from his brow. But this time, his target was not the giant ape, but the fiery lizard, the burning one, several dozen zhang away. Boom! Although nothing happened, Wang Chong could clearly see that the giant lizard that had been madly spewing flames suddenly froze for a few moments, as if it had been frozen in place. But soon enough, another stream of magma spewed out of the lizard's open mouth and splashed onto the ground, creating a huge charred pit. It works! Psychic energy attacks truly are effective against these behemoths. But how can I heavily injure them? Even control them? Wang Chong deeply frowned. He could sense that he had found the right method. But for some reason, the effect was extremely limited. It was like he had found the path, but he could not open that half-closed door. But as Wang Chong was racking his brains, that familiar and crazed laughter rang out once more. Ha ha ha, I overestimated you. So you weren't a psychic energy practitioner at all. Although you have powerful psychic energy, you don't know how to use psychic energy to attack. At this moment, Mazel felt like he had discovered a new continent. He had originally been filled with apprehension toward Wang Chong, and for this reason, he had been filled with killing intent. But when Wang Chong charged at the behemoth, Mazel realized that he had been wrong. This scoundrel wasn't as formidable as he had imagined. It appeared that Mazel had only a smattering of psychic energy, a complete amateur. Is that so? Do you really think so? At these words, Wang Chong's body froze and he came to a sudden stop. He raised his head and coldly smiled at the giant ape possessed by Mazel. At that moment, he suddenly knew what he had to do. Although Wang Chong was not a pure psychic energy expert, he knew quite a few psychic energy techniques. One of them was called the beast taming art. This was a technique that used psychic energy to control other animals. The only problem was that although Wang Chong knew of this technique, he had never used it before. Moreover, in the apocalyptic world, the majority of the animals that Wang Chong had encountered were tigers and wolves. This was probably the largest creature that the beast taming technique could control. But the behemoth was completely different from those creatures, and Wang Chong had no idea if it would be of any use. Whether it's useful or not, I can only try. At the very least, this is a psychic energy technique. At this thought, Wang Chong's eyes hardened. Rumble! Wang Chong suddenly shot into the air like a hawk, heading straight for the giant ape's head. With a flash, he landed on the arm of the giant ape at an incredible angle. At the same time, he leaped towards the head of the giant beast without stopping. What? Mazel was flabbergasted. He had never imagined that Wang Chong, who was clearly weaker than him, would dare to charge at him. Damn it! The giant ape flipped its palm and grabbed at Wang Chong with the power to pluck the stars and seize the moon. But before the palm could land, Wang Chong's eyes flashed with cold light, and a vast psychic energy that was completely different from before erupted from the center of Wang Chong's brow. Beast taming art. Bzzz. This psychic energy was like a bright moon, like a star, imbued with a wild nature, like a running wolf or a wild bear. In a flash, it burrowed into the giant ape's brow and connected with its soul. Bzzz. Buzz. In an instant, the giant ape's entire body began to tremble. No, this is impossible. Within the giant ape's body, Mazel let out a scream of shock, as if he had encountered the most terrifying thing in the world. He had never imagined that this young Tang people could use the same psychic energy as his behemoth fusion art, a psychic energy technique that could enter the mind of a behemoth and control its soul. How could there be such a thing? Mazel's entire body began to tremble. After his initial shock and rage, the sky darkened as Mazel almost instinctively controlled one of his thick ape arms and smashed it at Wang Chong. The speed of this smash was several times faster than usual when it was in a state of fury. Just when the enormous ape arm was about to smash down on Wang Chong, Even Wang Chong, a Saint Martial Tier 8 expert, was doomed to die. But at this moment, the inconceivable took place. Boom! A huge boom rang out. And before the ape's arm could even smash down, another huge ape's palm suddenly rose up like a pair of steel pincers, firmly grabbing onto the arm that was about to smash down, blocking the shocking attack. Shock! Everyone who saw this sight was flabbergasted, so shocked that they couldn't speak. For a moment, the entire battlefield was eerily still. Even Abu Muslim and Ziad had noticed this abnormal sight. This what's going on? The giant ape is hitting itself? Everyone on the ground was dumbfounded. This was impossible. Deep underground, Mazel cried out in alarm, his eyes flashing open in extreme shock. The behemoth fusion art was a secret art passed down from the ancient civilization, one that transcended the current era. Even though it was somewhat incomplete, its power was unquestionable. But now that he had control over the consecrated, these Tang people were still able to fight with him over control of the consecrated, and they had even succeeded in controlling one of its arms. This was simply unbelievable. At the very least, in Mazel's mind, this was something that could never happen. How could something like this happen? There can't be any technique that can compare to the behemoth fusion art. Mazel clenched his teeth, his eyes on the verge of bursting. Ha ha ha, like I said, it's too early for you to be celebrating. At this moment, a voice rang out in Mazel's mind. Wang Chong was standing on the left shoulder of the giant ape. The fur on this part of the giant ape was extremely thick, and Wang Chong's fur reached his knees. He could even feel the bulging muscles beneath the fur, brimming with explosive power. Wang Chong raised his head to the giant ape's savage head, his eyes glimmering with a strange light. The beast taming art was far more useful than he had imagined. Behemoths are essentially animals. As long as they're animals, the beast taming art can be used. Wang Chong's eyes were brimming with excitement. At the start, he had been worried that the beast taming art wouldn't work, or that he would run into some sort of obstacle. But Wang Chong quickly realized that the giant ape's body was brimming with the genes of all kinds of animals. Whether it was taming wolves, tigers, elephants, lions, the beast taming art could be used on the giant ape's body. Chapter 987. So what if you can control one of the consecrated's arms? My abilities are far greater than you imagine. If you fight with me, you'll still die. Mazel savagely said. Boom! The giant ape's right arm shook, freeing itself from the grip of the left arm. At the same time, it punched out, circling around the giant ape to smash at the ant-like Wang Chong on the ape's shoulder. Pung! A pitch-black elbow enlarged from small to large, slanting horizontally. With a hong sound, it was like moving clouds and flowing water, immediately blocking the giant ape's hidden attack. Buzz! Mazel's face flickered. He was also controlling the giant ape's body, but the ape's arm had a completely different effect in Wang Chong's hands. The nimbleness of the arm were on a completely different level. At the very least, Mazel was not as nimble. In the end, Mazel was a psychic energy expert, but in terms of fighting skills, he was still far inferior to Wang Chong. Haha, it's impolite not to reciprocate. Now it's my turn. Wang Chong sneered. Waiting for death had never been his style. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong attacked. Boom! Wang Chong did not use the giant ape to counterattack. Instead, he sent a majestic stream of psychic energy through the giant ape's forehead and through the meridians, slamming into Mazel's mind. Unlike before, Mazel felt like he had been stabbed by a sharp needle, his soul trembling as he screamed. Haha, Mazel! Wang Chong suddenly called out Mazel's name. The more he used psychic energy, the more he could sense that it contained many secrets. After several clashes, Wang Chong had discovered many secrets, even the name of this Arab divine strength expert, Mazel. I've already seen through your secret. You have no chance against me. Wang Chong was not a pure psychic energy expert, nor did he have any experience in psychic energy battles. But in this battle with a psychic energy expert like Mazel, Wang Chong had rapidly grasped the mysteries of psychic energy, allowing him to rapidly gain experience in psychic energy battles. More importantly, Although Wang Chong did not know the behemoth fusion art and did not have Mazel's vast experience, Wang Chong was able to understand the core mysteries of psychic energy while using the beast-taming art. The key to mental power was in the depths of the eyebrows, the part of the brain. There were some special meridians in the human brain, which were related to mental power. If one's mental power ran in these special meridians, it was equivalent to hiding in a castle, which could greatly reduce the mental impact from the outside world. Thus, if he wanted to heavily injure Mazel and break the technique he had placed on the giant ape, he had to slowly expel Mazel's psychic energy. Bang! With this understanding of psychic energy, Wang Chong's psychic energy entered one of the meridians in his mind and slammed into Mazel's psychic energy. This time, without any obstruction, Wang Chong's psychic energy thorns had a completely different effect. Aya! Mazel screamed, his entire body trembling in pain. Even the giant ape was affected, its long and thick fur fiercely shivering. Damn! Mazel was both shocked and infuriated. He had never imagined that Wang Chong would so quickly understand the core mysteries of psychic energy. If Wang Chong could be said to be a layman before, he was now an expert, perhaps even a grandmaster. I won't let you go. No one can act so impudently in front of me. Mazel's mind seethed with hatred as he scanned the ground, his gaze suddenly passing over the retreating Tang soldiers. A thought flashed through his mind, and a sinister smile appeared on Mazel's face. Brat, do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Do you think that I don't know that you care about those ant-like soldiers the most? You fought me so desperately just to buy time to save them. Since that's the case, I'll let you see what happens to those who oppose me. I'll kill them all. At the end, Mazel's expression was savage and savage. Boom! A massive ape suddenly raised its leg and stomped down, charging toward a group of great Tang soldiers in the distance. Not good, Wang Chong grimaced. Just as Mazel had guessed, he had been fighting with Mazel in order to cover the retreat of the Tang dynasty soldiers. By attacking these ordinary soldiers, Mazel had struck right at his weak spot, which was precisely what Wang Chong feared and worried about. Ha ha ha! I've finally figured it out. You just want to protect those soldiers. Now, I'll let you have a taste of despair. Mazel proudly laughed as he controlled the giant ape to charge at the tens of thousands of Tang dynasty soldiers. At almost the same time, the Burning One, the Reaper, and the other behemoths raised their heads in response. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, the four behemoths moved at the same time, abandoning their targets and charging at the retreating Tang army. Didn't you want to save them? Let me see how you save them. I'll kill them all right now. Mazel heartily laughed. In his battle with Wang Chong, he had always been at a disadvantage, but now, Mazel had finally discovered Wang Chong's weakness. Although he could not attack Wang Chong, his psychic energy allowed him to clearly see Wang Chong's pale complexion. All of this confirmed that his conjecture was correct. He would make this youth of the Tang dynasty pay the price for his arrogance. Nearby, nearly 600 Tang dynasty soldiers were retreating at full speed. Their armor was in tatters and stained with blood, and they appeared to be at their limits. Not good, it's the giant ape. He's charging at us. Everyone run. Seeing the giant ape charging towards them, the group of people revealed looks of horror and scattered in all directions. Haha, do you think you can escape? I'll kill you first, and then I'll kill the rest. A savage smile appeared in Mazel's scarlet eyes as he looked down at them. He did not use his fists to attack, but raised one of his hairy feet and stomped down on the Tang dynasty soldiers. Given the giant ape's abilities, this stomp would be enough to obliterate all 500 Tang dynasty soldiers, man and horse alike. Come, let me see how you'll stop me. Mazel's face was scornful and cruel to the extreme. Mazel had never cared about these ordinary soldiers, but as long as he could deal a blow to Wang Chong, he didn't mind personally killing them all. Bastard! Wang Chong's eyes went red. Just as the 500 Tang dynasty soldiers were about to die under the giant ape's feet, a violet sword chi as thin as a finger suddenly shot out from the giant ape's left shoulder and into the back of the ape's knee. The giant ape's foot was just about to descend when its entire leg suddenly went numb. causing it to pause in the air for 2 or 3 seconds. Damn it! Mazel clenched his teeth, immediately understanding that Wang Chong's sword had struck a vital point on the giant ape, causing it to be paralyzed. I'd like to see how long you can buy for them. You're just struggling at death's door. Boom! The consecrated's foot stomped down, creating a massive crater in the ground and sending large chunks of rock flying. But even so, Wang Chong's sword had still given them a chance to escape. The 500 Tang Dynasty soldiers were still in a state of shock, but they still managed to escape the giant ape's attack range. You can save them for a moment, but you can't save them forever. Mazel sneered as he controlled the consecrated's left foot to continue the pursuit. But a moment later, Mazel was dumbfounded. The right foot that should have been following suddenly seemed to have a life of its own, and began to step backward. After the consecrated stepped out with its left leg, its center of gravity was on its right leg, so the giant ape lost its balance and fell backward. You bastard! Mazel was both shocked and infuriated. He had never dared to believe that Wang Chong had managed to control the giant ape's other right leg in such a short amount of time, even causing the consecrated to intentionally lose its balance. I'll kill you! In his shock and fury, Mazel thrust a palm at Wang Chong's left shoulder, but Wang Chong blocked it as expected. Mazel, you're too conceited. I said before that I've seen through all your secrets. You can't win in front of me. Wang Chong's voice rang out in Mazel's mind. Standing on the giant ape's furry left shoulder, Wang Chong's eyes were cold and disdainful. As the most accomplished war saint of the Central Plains, Wang Chong's comprehension ability was unimaginable to someone like Mazel. Even though Wang Chong was not very skilled in the field of psychic energy, his foe had become Wang Chong's best teacher. Wang Chong had not only grasped the essence of psychic energy and understood Mazel's secrets. More importantly, by grasping the secrets of psychic energy, Wang Chong had also grasped the key to determining the outcome of this battle. Bang! A bolt of lightning seemed to explode in the world of Mazel's mind. Wang Chong's scattered psychic energy suddenly transformed into thousands of flood dragons that fiercely attacked Mazel. Unlike Wang Chong's previous psychic energy spikes, this attack was hundreds of times more ferocious. Boom boom boom. Wang Chong's psychic energy transformed into thousands of flood dragons that ravaged Mazel's mind, tearing, biting, clawing, and lunging. In a few short moments, Mazel's psychic energy began to rapidly weaken. Wang Chong's inexperience was nowhere to be seen. This fierce attack was like that of the most formidable psychic energy expert. This was the first time in Mazel's life that he had encountered such a fierce attack. Chapter 988. Brat, you're too arrogant. The world of psychic energy isn't as simple as you imagine it to be. Mazel shrieked. Whoosh! An enormous black demon god emerged from the Black Sea, wielding a trident, its body exuding black flames. The trident in its hand thundered like a bolt of lightning toward the flood dragons formed from Wang Chong's psychic energy. Pung! A black flood dragon's lower jaw was pierced by the halberd, and it instantly exploded into a puff of black smoke, disappearing without a trace. The black demon god swept its halberd horizontally again, and with a series of loud booms, another 7 or 8 flood dragons were reduced to dust. The black demon god's attacks were clearly stronger than the dragons. However, no matter how powerful the black demon god's attack was, it could not withstand the storm-like attacks of thousands of flood dragons. In the blink of an eye, with a miserable howl, the black demon god immediately disappeared into the void. It's useless. In the psychic world, I have countless demon gods. You can't beat me. Mazel's gloomy voice resounded through the world. Before he could finish his words, 1, 2, 3, tens of thousands of demon gods emerged from the surface of the Black Sea and attacked the flood dragons that filled the sky. This was a gruesome massacre, with flood dragon after flood dragon falling to the attacks of the black demon gods. But before Mazel could gloat for long, the flood dragons in the sky suddenly began to transform. The muscles on the forehead of one of the flood dragons bulged, transforming into a pair of knotted dragon horns. At the same time, the flood dragon's body began to swell, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. The flood dragons were now 10 times their original size. They were no longer flood dragons but massive black dragons. What? Mazel's eyes went wide in disbelief at the transformation of the flood dragons. Mazel, if you're done with your moves, it's my turn now. Wang Chang's voice rumbled like thunder, reverberating above the black ocean. Pooh! Before the voice had even died away, a black flame that was like a river spewed out from the dragon's mouth, instantly burning through the chest of a black demon god. That black demon god lowered its head, staring blankly at the large hole in its chest. A few seconds later, it exploded with a boom, turning into a cloud of black smoke. Damn it! Mazel's mind reeled in shock. I won't lose to you. I absolutely won't lose to you. Mazel, what other skills do you have? Wang Chang's voice came down from the sky, and Mazel was instantly enraged by these words. Reckless fool! You've only learned a little bit of mental power, and you really think you can fight against me? Today, I'll let you know what the terrifying abyss is. Mazel clenched his teeth. As a noble priest and commander of the behemoth army, he could not allow himself to lose to a fledgling brat. Rumble! With a thought from Mazel, the black ocean underwent a massive transformation. All the black water vanished, replaced by an enormous maw. This massive mouth was unimaginably large, and the black dragons that Wang Chong had transformed into were like specks of dust in comparison. The massive mouth swallowed all the black dragons in one gulp. You think you've seen through my secret? Laughable. This is the ultimate secret of psychic energy. Now that you've entered my abyssal world, you can forget about ever leaving. You will be my slave for all eternity. Mazel's voice rose and fell, brimming with boundless conceit. The world of psychic energy was a strange and treacherous place, and it contained countless techniques. But amongst all these techniques, the supreme psychic energy technique was unquestionably the psychic world. As a supreme psychic energy expert, Mazel had formed his own psychic world 10 years ago. In the process of helping the Arabian Empire invade the various countries, Mazel had used this technique to subdue countless psychic energy practitioners and martial artists, imprisoning their souls and making them his slaves for all eternity. The abyssal world. This was Mazel's unique ability. In the Arabian Empire, even the governors and great generals, who didn't know any psychic arts, knew of Mazel's abyssal world. The abyssal world could only be used once a month, and Mazel's mental injuries from his battle with Wang Chong made it impossible for him to use the abyssal world. But Mazel's hatred for Wang Chong was too great to care about. He wanted to use the abyssal world to forever trap Wang Chong's soul in his mental world. Bzzz. The sky darkened as Wang Chong's black dragons were completely trapped in Mazel's psychic world. This ability, Wang Chong narrowed his eyes. Mazel's psychic energy was extremely unique and bizarre, but Wang Chong could still sense a flaw in this psychic world. This world was not as rigid as he had imagined. Haha, let me see what else you can do now. Enter my psychic world. In 10 days, you'll slowly forget your memories of the past. When the time comes, you'll become my slave, obedient to my every command. The endless abyss roiled down below, and black energy surged in from all directions, swiftly condensing into Mazel's avatar. Mazel's face was brimming with the satisfaction of a victor. The best way to take revenge on an enemy was to kill them, and an even better way was to make them a slave for all eternity, forcing them to submit to one's will. Only now was victory truly within his grasp in this contest with Wang Chong. Is that so? A voice drifted down from the sky, and the tens of thousands of black dragons in the sky began to converge. In the blink of an eye, all the black dragons vanished. Wang Chong summoned a psychic clone of his, and slowly descended from the sky. The armor on his body also began to change, slowly turning from black to gold, and exuding a noble and divine aura. Boom! With Wang Chong's voice, a massive golden arm slammed into the abyss with the weight of a thunderbolt. It was just a simple palm, but in an instant, the entire abyss was immediately stirred up with huge waves. Even the entire world was shaking because of it. Although Wang Chong was not a psychic energy practitioner and didn't know many psychic energy techniques at the start, his psychic energy had been one of the best in the world from the moment of his rebirth. Due to the obsession in his heart, his mental strength was more tenacious and powerful than any other powerhouse in the world. For someone who had died once, there was no psychic energy technique that could make him submit. Wang Chong was sitting on a mountain of treasures. With his experience as the war saint and his top-class psychic energy, learning psychic energy techniques was as easy as turning over his hand. This massive golden arm was something that Wang Chong had comprehended in a short time by weaving his psychic energy together. This attack was already far stronger than the psychic thorns from before. It's useless. Mazel was at first dazed by this sight, but he quickly sneered. This is my world. No matter how capable you are, it's useless. In this place, you can't harm me. Everything is up to me. Wang Chong coldly snorted and ignored Mazel. In the blink of an eye, he gathered his psychic energy into another golden arm, even stronger than the last. But this time, it was aimed not at the abyss, but at Mazel. Rumble! The golden hand smashed down, pulverizing Mazel, and causing the entire abyssal world to shudder. But a moment later, Wang Chong grimaced and pulled back the golden hand from the black abyss. As he focused his eyes, he saw that the golden hand had at some point been stained with an inky black liquid. This black liquid seemed to have a life of its own, traveling along the 5 golden fingers and spreading throughout the entire golden hand. Not only that, this inky black liquid also contained a powerful corrosive energy. As Wang Chong pulled back the golden hand, the 5 golden fingers began to corrode and fall to the ground. What is this? Wang Chong paled at this sight. Now do you know how powerful I am? Mazel coldly chuckled, his voice making no attempt to conceal his smugness. Several dozen feet away from Wang Chong, the black fog began to gather, revealing Mazel once more. The more you resist, the more severe your injuries will be. You're only harming yourself. In my view, you should obediently give up and submit to me. A strange light flashed through Mazel's eyes. Bzzz, the abyss suddenly vanished, and at some point, a thick, almost tangible darkness surged in from all directions. This darkness energy was identical to the black liquid that had stained Wang Chong's hand. Not only that, an enormous pressure as heavy as a mountain began to rapidly increase, accompanied by a thick darkness that pressed down on Wang Chong. Now obediently accept your destiny. Mazel had long since vanished, and his resounding voice echoed through the darkness. As he spoke, the darkness around him suddenly accelerated and surged toward Wang Chong. Not good. Wang Chong grimaced, but there was nowhere to run in the abyssal world. Black smoke began to rise from Wang Chong's body, and his psychic energy began to rapidly weaken. Mazel had finally used his ultimate move, using the power of the abyssal world to rapidly assimilate Wang Chong. Success! Chapter 989. With his status in the Arabian Empire and the assistance of the behemoth army, he had never been forced into such a sorry state before. He had consumed an enormous amount of physical energy, and even his most prided psychic energy had been greatly weakened. But everything had finally come to an end. The power of the abyssal world was something that no one could resist. This was a supreme power, and even the elite priests of Arabia would find it very difficult to escape from it, much less ordinary people. No matter how formidable this infidel of the Tang dynasty was, he was doomed to be assimilated into his world and become his puppet, forever following at his side. But a moment later, an intense ripple came from the other end of his mind. Boom! In Mazel's mind, a blazing ball of fire like a blazing golden sun suddenly exploded. This golden sun that suddenly appeared erupted with boundless heat, forcing back all the corrosive dark energy in all directions. Hiss! The corrosive energy in Mazel's psychic world immediately began to disperse like snow being poured into boiling water. This is impossible. Mazel's face paled as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt, the blood draining from his face like it was made of paper. His body trembled in shock, and he almost fell off the head of the centipede monster. Impossible! How could anyone resist the power of my abyssal world? This is impossible. The psychic world was the supreme technique of every psychic energy expert. Even the most resolute of great generals would find it difficult to escape if they accidentally fell into Mazel's psychic world. If not for the fact that Mazel's body was so weak that he feared it wouldn't be able to endure a battle with a great general, he would have already begun to attack them. But once he fell into the psychic world, everything changed. It can't be. It can't be. This must be a coincidence. No matter what, I have to kill you. Mazel closed his eyes and hardened his heart, pouring all his psychic energy into the mind of the consecrated. The more psychic energy one poured into the psychic world, the stronger the abyssal world would be. But the greater the risk, the greater the risk. If he failed, he might be consigned to eternal damnation and die. Therefore, even though they had a powerful top-notch mental technique like the spiritual world, almost all the esoteric mental powerhouses rarely used it. Even if they did, they would not put all their mental power into it. Mental energy was equivalent to the soul. When one's mental energy was exhausted, the soul would perish. But in order to deal with Wang Chong, Mazel had been driven to the brink of madness. Buzz! A moment later, Mazel's mind returned to the abyssal world. In the depths of the darkness, Wang Chong's aura had vanished, replaced by a blazing golden sun imbued with destructive energy. This was a dark world, but now it had the brightest sun. Mazel had never encountered such a situation in his life. That's impossible. No one knows the secret of the sun. How did you do it? Although he knew that Wang Chong would not answer, Mazel still couldn't help but ask. Psychic energy experts could transform into all things, and there was almost nothing that was impossible, except for the sun. To psychic energy experts, this was a taboo. In the history of psychic energy that Mazel knew of, there had been many supreme psychic energy experts who had been able to use their minds to create a real moon. But none of them had been able to create a real sun. The best they could do was create a ball of light, because no one knew the true appearance of the sun. Some people had imagined the sun to be a massive ball of fire, but the result was only a ball of fire. But this radiant sun exuded the purest and highest level of heat that Mazel's abyssal world exuded. This was the dream of all ancient psychic energy experts. Not even Mazel could remain calm in the face of this energy. He truly had lost his composure. This radiant sun exuded boundless heat that even set Mazel's abyssal world ablaze. No powerful psychic energy expert of the past had ever been able to do such a thing. This was the true sun. The secret of the sun? Wang Chong chuckled, his voice coming from the blazing sun. What secret does the sun have? Isn't it the corona, the troposphere, sunspots, flares, and the core? To the two-time human Wang Chong, the sun was nothing more than an ordinary object. It was Mazel who was making a fuss over nothing. The corona, the troposphere, sunspots, flares, and the core. Mazel was at a loss. He recognized every word Wang Chong had said, but he had no idea what they meant when they were put together. Mazel had never heard of these words in any scripture, book, or psychic energy expert. He instinctively sensed that this was the core secret that all supreme psychic energy experts desired. But Mazel had no way of grasping it. Let me see just what the corona and flares are. Once I assimilate you, capture you, and turn you into my puppet, all your secrets will be mine to use. Mazel's eyes glimmered with a sinister light. If this was a truly powerful psychic energy expert, their mind able to create the purest radiant sun, Mazel would have immediately fled. But this Tang people had clearly only managed to create this power by chance, and had not mastered it. His level of skill, experience, and abilities had clearly not reached that terrifying level. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and Mazel could not let it go. Rumble. The world shuddered, and the abyssal world formed from psychic energy seemed to come to life. The pure and corrosive darkness began to pour in from all sides. Abyssal apocalypse. This was the strongest attack of the abyssal world that Mazel had created. It gathered the energy of the abyssal world, and was more than 10,000 times more powerful than a normal psychic energy attack. It was Mazel's final move against those extremely powerful and undefeatable foes. Although it was powerful, the abyssal apocalypse was only effective against foes trapped in one psychic world. Wang Chong's ability to create a true sun was so powerful that Mazel felt suffocated. Only the abyssal apocalypse could defeat him. Bang! In a flash, Mazel's abyssal world collapsed and began to shrink at an astonishing speed. The pressure on Wang Chang's body also multiplied, multiplying by thousands of times. This was a power that could destroy Wang Chang's soul. As Mazel's psychic world collapsed, Wang Chang's sun underwent a completely different transformation. Bzzz. The blazing sun first began to shrink, and then it began to swell. In the blink of an eye, it had grown to 1,000 times its original size, and the intense heat radiated from it began to radiate through the world. Mazel's body, now several dozen times stronger and brimming with corrosive darkness energy, began to madly combust and burn away at an astonishing rate. If one looked carefully, one would realize that the sun created by Wang Chang's psychic energy was becoming more and more detailed. The corona was rising and falling from the surface of the sun, creating countless waves of heat, and even the water droplets could be clearly seen. Further down, the tens of thousands of streams of air in the troposphere were constantly surging, their changes 100 times more complex than before. The sunspots and flares that had been motionless on the surface of the sun were beginning to move, constantly appearing and disappearing. In short, if he had only been able to simulate 10% of the sun at the start, Wang Chang was now able to use his psychic energy to simulate 30 to 40% of the sun. In addition, the heat exuded by this sun was getting stronger and stronger, and it was able to resist the entire abyssal realm with unstoppable momentum. This can't be real. Mazel's eyes were wide open, and his teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to shatter. He simply couldn't accept this transformation. Wang Chang was growing far too quickly, something that no psychic energy practitioner had ever experienced before. But the more powerful Wang Chang was, the more Mazel's killing intent burned. The abyssal apocalypse could not be stopped. Once it was activated, it had to be carried out, or else the user would suffer an enormous backlash. Boom! The abyssal world continued to collapse, and it was even faster and fiercer than before. The pressure it exuded was even greater, and it was like an invisible hand was squeezing down, with Wang Chang's sun in the center of this hand. Rumble! As the abyssal world collapsed, Wang Chang's sun swelled once more, the details of its transformation growing more and more detailed. Mazel! It's useless. Your strength has no effect on me. Wang Chang's calm voice came out of the sun. Wang Chang had no idea that Mazel was using his strongest technique. As he battled with Mazel, he was gaining more and more experience. If Wang Chang had been groping about on his own, it would have taken him 10 years or even longer. But with Mazel's sparring partner, Wang Chang was able to skip these steps and reach an extremely high level of mastery. In some aspects, Wang Chang had fused Mazel's experience with his own insights, knowledge and understanding. In some aspects, Wang Chang's psychic energy was even greater than Mazel's. All psychic energy is just an illusion. No matter how many techniques you have, how many abilities you have, it's like an itch to me. It's impossible for you to defeat me. Chapter 990. Buzz! Deep underground, Mazel's pupils constricted at Wang Chang's voice, as if he had been stabbed. All psychic energy is just an illusion. Wang Chang had casually described the core essence of psychic energy, and this was the consensus of all top-class psychic energy experts. However, saying it was one thing, those who truly understood this point and bowed to it were few and far between. Moreover, many people had only crudely interpreted it as psychic energy is fake. But if this was the case, why had so many people been assimilated, captured, and turned into puppets? Moreover, if the mental strength was fake, why did those martial arts experts die after the mental strength disappeared? The domain of psychic energy was far from simple, far more complicated than the superficial understanding people had put it. All psychic energy is just an illusion, had always been an irrefutable truth. But only 1 in a million could truly do it. Only those supreme psychic energy experts who could look down on the world could truly understand the meaning of these words and do it. 20 years ago, when Mazel was still a minor priest, he had heard someone say these words. But not even Mazel, the genius who had comprehended and created the abyssal world, had been able to reach this level. Mazel refused to believe that there was someone who had comprehended this supreme level faster than him. This can't be true, impossible. I refuse to believe it. Mazel's eyes were red as he bellowed. Rumble. The world trembled, and the sound of mountains collapsing and the earth cracking could be heard. Mazel's abyssal world also began to collapse, the pressure on the core of the world rapidly increasing. Under the immense pressure of the world, Wang Chang's sun of psychic energy was finally affected. The space around the sun was constantly being compressed, the surrounding space constantly twisting. Even the surface of the sun began to ripple, showing signs of trembling. Good. Mazel rejoiced at this sight, knowing that the abyssal world was finally taking effect. At this point in the battle, he had finally regained the initiative. As long as the abyssal apocalypse could shake Wang Chang's sun and affect him, he would be able to defeat the Tang people. But just when Mazel was preparing to increase the power of the abyssal apocalypse, a golden spear, divine, dazzling, and suffused with boundless energy, descended from the heavens. With a single strike, it pierced through the collapsing abyssal world. Cackalack. Cracks began to spread across the abyss, and energy began to seep through them. No! Mazel let out a cry of despair. This spear had not only pierced through his psychic world, it had also taken away his last sliver of hope. The spiritual world was far more powerful than ordinary spiritual attacks. However, in order to use the ultimate technique of the spiritual world, one must first trap the opponent in one's own world. But now, the abyss had shattered, and everything no longer existed. Everything is just an illusion. Mazel, you've lost. Wang Chang's calm voice resounded. The abyssal world crumbled, and Wang Chong and Mazel were returned to their original world. Buzz! On the giant ape's left shoulder, half of Wang Chang's body was hidden in the ape's fur. His eyes were calm, as if he could see through all secrets. Wang Chong had long ago tempered his will to an extremely firm level. In this aspect, Mazel found it difficult to compare. Now is the time to end this battle. A cold light flashed in Wang Chang's eyes. The consciousness that had been trapped by Mazel merged with the consciousness of his main body and entered the giant ape's brain to unleash a torrent of attacks. Unlike before, this attack was swift, fierce, and all-pervasive. One meridian after another, Wang Chong forced Mazel's consciousness out of the giant ape's mind. Under Wang Chang's assault, Mazel was forced back again and again, his army in utter disarray. Impossible! I can't possibly lose. Mazel bellowed in fury, his teeth clenched as he used all his strength to resist, but he was still unable to stop Wang Chang's psychic energy attack that burned like lava and could melt metal. In the blink of an eye, Mazel's control over the giant ape dropped from 90% to 70%, and then to 50%, 30%. No matter how fiercely Mazel struggled, he could not escape the fate of being expelled by Wang Chong. Boom! Mazel's psychic energy was finally forced out by Wang Chong. But Mazel's psychic energy did not return to his body. Instead, it swayed through the air and entered the body of the roaring burning one several dozen zhang away. Squelch! The burning one turned its head and opened its mouth, spitting out a stream of lava tens of thousands of degrees at the giant ape. So what if you can imitate the sun? I won't lose to you. This battle will not end until one of us is dead. Mazel madly howled as he controlled the burning one to unleash another stream of flames at the giant ape. Roar! The ape roared. 2 spots on its body were burned by the burner's fire, and even its skin and flesh were burnt away, sizzling with black smoke. However, the damage the ape suffered was not as bad as expected. As the strongest of the 4 beasts, the consecrated's defense was far beyond imagination. Even the burner could not injure it with a normal fire. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. Mazel, you've already lost. Stop struggling. A cold light flashed through the scarlet eyes of the great ape. He suddenly spread open his arms, bent his 2 thick legs at the knees, and suddenly leapt forward. Like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, he pounced towards the burner. Boom! The giant ape's head tilted to the side, and a surge of fiery light brushed past its ear. At almost the same time, One of the giant ape's arms smashed heavily into the burning one's neck. With a miserable howl, the burning one's body flipped over, its massive body kicking up a large amount of rubble and gravel as it flew through the air and crashed heavily into the ground. Ah! Cries of alarm came from all around, and countless figures began to retreat like they were avoiding the plague. Those Arab cavalry who had been in the middle of their slaughter were especially terrified, their eyes brimming with unease. They had been completely stunned by this sight. Translated by Hypersheep 325. The burning one's first attack on the giant ape had been a coincidence, but when the giant ape lunged at the burning one and began to fight, it was clear that things were not so simple. Damn it! What's the consecrated doing? Why is it fighting with the burning one? It's not the consecrated, but the burning one. Ah! Careful! They're coming at us. Where's Mazel? The behemoths are used to deal with the Tang people, not to kill each other. The burning one quickly got up from the ground, lunged forward, and bit down on the giant ape's right arm. The two behemoths quickly began to fight, and the Arab soldiers who saw the behemoths charging at them all paled in fright. They urged their horses to retreat to the rear, and the orderly formation instantly fell into chaos. But the battle between the behemoths had only just begun. Boom! The sky darkened as an enormous foot stomped down. The several hundred Arab cavalry paled, and before they could even run, they were crushed into meat paste. Bastard! Mazel, what are you doing? Hurry and take control of your behemoths. A furious roar came from the sky. Abu Muslim had been doing all he could to suppress Gao Xianji, intending to use this chance to kill the Anshi war god of the Tang dynasty. But the consecrated, one of the most important fighting forces on his side, had killed one of his own. This was an unforgivable mistake. But a moment later, Abu Muslim was left dumbfounded. Lord Governor, hurry and help me. I can't hold on for much longer. Mazel's panicked and urgent voice rang out in his ears. What's going on? Abu Muslim was flabbergasted by this voice. He had been so focused on dealing with Gao Xianji that he hadn't been paying much attention to Mazel's movements. He had never imagined that Mazel would be forced into this state. Just what happened? Could it be that the one controlling the behemoths isn't Mazel? Abu Muslim was truly flabbergasted. It's that brat from the Tang dynasty. He's about to take control of the entire behemoth army. Lord Governor, hurry and help me deal with him. Mazel's voice was extremely anxious, tinged with a deep despair. What? Abu Muslim's body trembled, his face covered in disbelief. He knew that this young commander of the Tang dynasty was an astonishing master of the art of war. But he had never imagined that he would be able to compete with Mazel in terms of psychic energy, and that he would even be able to force the commander of the behemoth army into this state. Bzz. Abu Muslim scanned his surroundings, and quickly noticed Wang Chong on the consecrated's left shoulder. Bang! As Abu Muslim was observing, the giant ape suddenly stepped forward, and landed in the middle of the Arab army several dozen feet away. Aya! The earth quaked and screams filled the air as hundreds of Arab cavalry were crushed into meat paste by the giant ape's massive foot. On the other side of the great ape, the giant red lizard's movements began to slow down. Its body stiffened, and even the accuracy of the flames it spat out was wavering. It would be to the left of the great ape for a moment, and then to the right of the great ape the next. It couldn't accurately hit the great ape that was right in front of it. For a burner, this was definitely not normal. Chapter 991. Wang Chong was on the verge of simultaneously taking control of the Burning One and the Consecrated. The two behemoths continued to stomp down, inflicting severe damage to the nearby Arab cavalry. Damn it! Abu Muslim's thick brows burned with rage. Bzz. Abu Muslim immediately threw off Gao Xianji and charged at Wang Chong on the giant ape's left shoulder. Boom! The world darkened as a massive black fist covered in golden divine armor punched toward Wang Chong. Before the fist even arrived, its enormous energy had already caused space to twist and crack like a spiderweb. The power of this punch far surpassed that of Saint Martial Tier 8, even that of an imperial great general, reaching a terrifying level. But a moment later, A sharp beam of sword chi pierced through Abu Muslim's 72 demon god pillar's fist. Although this attack was not as powerful as Abu Muslim's, it had chosen the perfect time and place to strike at the weakest point of Abu Muslim's fist energy. This sword instantly nullified Abu Muslim's attack. Abu Muslim, our battle isn't over yet. Where are you in such a rush to go? In a flash of light, Gao Xianji, dressed in armor, appeared in front of Abu Muslim. Gao Xianji's face was pale and devoid of blood, and his armor was in tatters. Bright red blood seeped out of the chinks in his armor. It was clear that he had been through an arduous battle. Even so, the smile on Gao Xianji's lips still remained, and he still maintained his composure and elegance. Gao Xianji, you're seeking death. Do you think that you can stop me in your current state? Abu Muslim's face was as cold as ice, his eyes blazing with rage. After so many battles, Gao Xianji was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Abu Muslim had originally believed that Gao Xianji would be tactful enough to dodge to the side, but he had not expected him to continue to fight. He was simply seeking his own death. Civil officials don't cherish talent, and military generals don't hesitate to die. This is their duty. If I were greedy for an easy life, I wouldn't have marched thousands of miles to this city of Talas. Today, no matter what, I will not take a step back. If Lord Governor has any trump cards, please use them. Gao Xianji held the sword in his right hand and smiled. His eyes were filled with determination. Abu Muslim's pupils constricted as he took a deep look at Gao Xianji, acting like he was getting to know him for the first time. Gao Xianji, I take back what I said earlier. You are a respectable opponent. A hint of respect appeared in Abu Muslim's eyes, and then he slowly straightened his body and took an extremely ancient bronze gauntlet from his bosom. The gauntlet was engraved with ancient characters, and images of gods and demons could be seen on its surface, even angels. The most dazzling of all was the large eye on the back of the gauntlet, the eye of the demon god. This was the name of this bronze gauntlet. The world to the west of the Tsong Mountains had developed in a completely different way from the Tang dynasty. An extremely powerful civilization had once existed here, and it had left behind many ruins and formidable artifacts. Unlike the Tang dynasty, all these ancient artifacts had belonged to the supreme ruler of the Arabian Empire, the Caliph. Abu Muslim's Eye of the Demon God had been bestowed upon him by the Caliph during an audience with the Caliph. There were two Eye of the Demon God gauntlet. One had been bestowed to Abu Muslim, while the other had been given to the most revered first prince of the Arabian Empire. The laws and energy contained within the Eye of the Demon God had transcended this era. The Caliph had once gathered all the craftsmen and experts of the Arabian Empire, in hopes of unraveling its secrets, but all their efforts had been in vain. But even so, there was one thing that could be confirmed. The Eye of the Demon God and Abu Muslim's 72 Demon God pillars art complemented each other, and could greatly increase his strength. There was even a rumor that the Eye of the Demon God had been left behind by one of the 72 demon gods of ancient times. Although Abu Muslim had possessed the Eye of the Demon God for a very long time, he had rarely used it. Even when he encountered an extremely formidable opponent, Abu Muslim would not wear the gauntlet. As the valiant governor of Iron and Blood of the East, Abu Muslim would only wear the gauntlet when he encountered an opponent worthy of his respect, using this method to end his opponent's life as a sign of respect. Abu Muslim was no stranger to Gao Xianji's eyes. They were the eyes of those who had made up their minds and were ready to die. There was no doubt that Gao Xianji had chosen his fate, and he had decided to use this method to buy time and cover the retreat of the army. Even though Abu Muslim was filled with respect for him, he would not let him have his way. Gao Xianji, as a sign of respect, I will use this gauntlet to personally end your life. Abu Muslim raised the gauntlet in his hand and sternly said. With these words, Abu Muslim suddenly stepped forward and lunged at Gao Xianji. At the same time, a powerful energy surged out of the bronze gauntlet and burrowed into Abu Muslim's body. In an instant, this Governor-General Dongfang, who was already very powerful to begin with, reached an even more terrifying level. Bang! A pitch-black fist energy shot forward with unimaginable speed, pulverizing Gao Xianji's sword chi with a single punch. Pfff. Gao Xianji suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The armor on his body shattered, and he was blasted flying. Lord Gao, Wang Chong, who was mentally battling with Mazel, suddenly paled when he saw what was going on in the distance. Awa! The behemoth roared as the fiery burning one opened its mouth and spat out a stream of fire. But this stream of fire was not aimed at the giant ape, but at Abu Muslim. In his battle with Mazel, Wang Chong had gained control over 60% of the burning one, including its ability to spit fire. Lord Governor, save me. At almost the same time, Mazel let out a scream. Within the burning one's body, Wang Chong's attacks were fierce to the extreme. Mazel's psychic energy was already less than a third of what it used to be, and Wang Chong was continuing to whittle away at his psychic energy. Moreover, it seemed like he would not rest until he was dead. Boom! In a flash, Abu Muslim turned his head and punched out, scattering the burning one's fiery flames. Abu Muslim was also extremely worried. The situation was slowly beginning to spiral out of control. The behemoths that he had borrowed from the Caliph of Baghdad were slowly losing control and trampling over his own army. From the sky, one could see that every step of the consecrated and the burning one would land in the middle of the Arab army. Screams filled the air as countless Arab horsemen died on the spot, their corpses never leaving behind a complete pulp. In just a few short moments, the Arab losses had reached 4,000 to 5,000, and they were still rapidly climbing. Moreover, what worried Abu Muslim the most was that Mazel had a special status. He was the commander of the behemoth army, a rare psychic energy expert, and also the Caliph's most favored subject. He had an extremely high status in the empire, and his status was extremely important to Abu Muslim. He had borrowed the behemoth army, and it was also because of him that Mazel had appeared in the city of Talis. If anything happened to Mazel, the Caliph would definitely be enraged. And as the supreme ruler of the East, Abu Muslim would not be able to escape the blame. Bang! Abu Muslim was getting more and more anxious, and his attacks against Gao Xianji were getting fiercer and fiercer. Awa! The sky darkened and the winds howled. Abu Muslim's body seemed to possess some sort of strange energy that could change the weather. Countless streams of energy began to converge on Abu Muslim's body, and behind Abu Muslim was a massive demon god, with horns and hooves, an ugly and lifelike face. It had suddenly appeared. The golden red pillar behind the demon god also exuded a mysterious aura. The countless ancient characters around it flickered in and out of existence, exuding an aura of destruction. Boom! This punch caused space to cave in, leaving behind a massive depression. My lord! In the blink of an eye, Qing Qianli pounced over, but he was sent flying by Abu Muslim with a single punch. The 72 demon god pillars' art was imbued with the power of an ancient civilization. Not even Qing Qianli was a match for it. Vomiting blood, his chest caved in, and he crashed to the ground like a cannonball, heavily injured. Cries of grief and indignation rang out from the vast battlefield. Countless Tang dynasty soldiers paled at this sight, their breathing almost stopping. Bastard! Wang Chong's eyes instantly turned red. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli were the two highest commanders of the Tang dynasty's western regions, and they were also people that Wang Chong respected. These people had fought for their country, spending half their lives guarding the border. They were true heroes. No matter what, these two could not be allowed to die here. Abu Muslim, you're seeking your own death. Suddenly, an enraged roar resounded through the heavens. A moment later, the earth quaked as the giant ape that had been fighting the burning one roared, bared its white fangs, and lunged at Abu Muslim in the air. The giant ape shot forward like a bolt of lightning, unleashing a massive fist that blotted out the sun as it lunged at Abu Muslim with the speed of a thunderbolt. The agility and flexibility displayed by the giant ape were something that Mazel could not compare to. It was like the abilities of a martial artist had been fused into the giant ape's body, giving it both immense strength and extraordinary martial arts. This was the most perfect form. Boom! The giant ape's fist stirred up an unimaginably powerful shockwave. Chapter 992. Asmodee's wrath. Abu Muslim had finally used the most fundamental ability of the 70 demon god pillars art, revealing his true secret. Asmodeus was one of the 72 demon god pillars. He was ranked 32nd among the 72 demon god pillars. Although his status wasn't the highest, with his identity, he had entered the ranks of the upper 36 demon god pillars. This ranking alone was enough to show that Abu Muslim had obtained the power of an extremely powerful demon god. Roar! In a flash of light, the violet-black scaled demon god behind Abu Muslim suddenly transformed, its entire body transforming from one head to three. The head of a bull, the head of a man, and the head of a ram. The three heads were vicious and fiendish, and all 6 of its eyes were cold and emotionless, golden vertical pupils. Boom! A moment later, the 72 demon god pillars behind Abu Muslim, Asmodeus, with a chilling expression punched out. Endless black energy gathered around him, and in the blink of an eye, the black energy transformed into a black dragon more than 30 zhang long. This black dragon was covered in black scales, and its mouth was filled with fine sharp teeth. The most terrifying thing was that its body was surrounded by tens of thousands of black lightning bolts. Each bolt of lightning contained a destructive power. Abu Muslim's black dragon rumbled through the world, the momentum and power of this move enough to make many great generals pale in comparison. Boom! The massive hell black dragon and the giant ape's right arm collided, and a moment later, everyone was left stunned. Abu Muslim's body remained unmoved, but the giant ape's body swayed and roared as it lost its balance and staggered backward, almost falling to the ground. Impossible! How could Abu Muslim be this powerful? Even the giant ape is no match for him. On the distant hills, even Huashu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoch couldn't help but be stunned by this sight, expressions of extreme shock appearing in their eyes. This fist alone was enough to place Abu Muslim at the peak of all great generals. Even Huashu Huaitsong and Dusong Mangpoch would have to admit their inferiority. Impossible! Could this bastard be even stronger than me? The celestial wolf great general Dewissely stood in the air, his face brimming with disbelief as he stared at the godlike Abu Muslim. As one of the best great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, Dewissely had always been conceited. Even long-established great generals like Huashu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoch had never been worthy of Dewissely's attention. The only person on the battlefield who could earn his respect was the invincible Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji. But Abu Muslim's punch, even the giant fist, had been forced back. Not even Dewissely had been able to unleash such a powerful force. But even so, someone as proud as Dewissely would never admit to this. If not for the sake of our alliance, I would have come and fought with you right now, Dewissely viciously said to himself. Roar! A massive fist, even larger than Dewissely's horse and gleaming with the light of steel, came crashing down from the side. This fist was so powerful that it could shatter steel, and even mountains. Damn it! Dewissely grimaced as he used the celestial wolf's divine procession, and thrust his halberd forward. Bang! The enormous power of this blow forced the skyquaking giant back, and he hurriedly pulled back his right hand, and began to blow. Truly a pack of beasts. Didn't I tell you already? I didn't come to deal with you. We're allies. Allies. Kill him. But Dewissely's words were answered by a furious roar. In the blink of an eye, a nearby skyquaking giant had taken the lead, and sent a massive fist smashing toward Dewissely. Behind this skyquaking giant, 1, 2, 3 countless skyquaking giants were lunging at Dewissely from all sides. He injured Mughar. Kill him. The giants roared as they charged at Dewissely from all sides. Not even the Tang dynasty soldiers had any intention of leaving. Dewissely was one with his horse, using the celestial wolf's divine procession to travel through the air. The storm of energy around him was like the sun hanging high in the sky, attracting the attention of all the skyquaking giants. In the eyes of the skyquaking giants, Dewissely had already become their #1 target. The stronger he displayed, the more enmity the skyquaking giants would feel toward him. A bunch of bastards. Dewissely felt like his lungs were about to explode from rage at the sight of the giants charging at him. He had come from the distance with the intention of dealing with Wang Chong, so that he could cooperate with the Arabs to finish him off. But to his surprise, a skyquaking giant had descended from the sky and landed at his side, immediately treating him as a target. Wuxia had only sent him flying. He had never expected that he would end up being surrounded by the skyquaking giants like a hornet's nest. Wuxia had already done his utmost to use the celestial wolf's divine procession to avoid them. But no matter where he went, the skyquaking giants would always come at him. Even though Wuxia had arrived on the battlefield, he still hadn't encountered Wang Chong. Not only that, with Wuxia's abilities, any skyquaking giant of any level would only be seeking death by recklessly challenging him. But the Turks and Uzan were allies with the Arabian Empire, and Wuxia could not kill them. As a result, the more skyquaking giants Wuxia killed, the more hatred he would attract. For a moment, Wuxia was in a difficult situation. In the distance, Abu Muslim's 72 demon god pillars' fist had stunned the entire crowd. But while everyone was still reeling in shock over Abu Muslim's strength, a black shadow flashed forward, and a massive metal cudgel 10-some meters long, one end thin and the other thick, rumbled into Abu Muslim's body. This strike was so sudden that even someone of Abu Muslim's strength felt his stellar energy scatter, and he was sent flying like a cannonball. Buzz! Half the battlefield was eerily silent, especially the Arab cavalry, whose eyes were bulging out of their sockets as they stared at the sky. Even Deputy Governor Ziad was so shocked that he couldn't speak. The consecrated staff had been so well hidden that everyone had only seen it stagger from Abu Muslim's blow. No one had noticed the staff hidden by the giant ape, and no one had even noticed when it had appeared in its hand. So what if it's Abu Muslim? He's still no match for me. Wang Chong steadied the giant ape, his scarlet eyes staring at the distant Abu Muslim, exuding a cold and steely light. No matter how powerful Abu Muslim was, or how many ancient artifacts he had, he could not truly contend against a behemoth. In Wang Chong's hands, the giant ape was no simple behemoth. On this battlefield, Wang Chong was confident that he could defeat any powerful foe with the consecrated. Ah! Marquis, save me! Suddenly, a gale blew, and a miserable scream came from the distance, accompanied by the roar of a giant beast. Wang Chong turned his head, and saw that the other two behemoths were rapidly approaching the retreating Tang army. Kill! With the help of the Reaper, these Tang people are dead for sure. Kill them! General has ordered that anyone who kills 100 Tang people will be rewarded with the rank of nobility and 10,000 gold coins. On the ground, tens of thousands of Arab cavalry were pursuing the behemoths, their eyes red and their armor drenched in blood, the vast majority of which was not their own. They had been suppressed by the Tang dynasty for so long. First, it had been Gao Xianji and the 70,000 soldiers of the Anqi Protectorate Army who had held them off for 2 months, causing countless Arab soldiers to die. Then came Wang Chong and the Qixi Protectorate. Even renowned Arab generals like Umar and Nerman, who had conquered many countries, had died at their hands. And the 2 steel defense lines that the Tang dynasty had constructed in front of Talas had rendered the famed Arab cavalry useless. This had left all the Arabs with a pent-up anger. But now that everything was over, they could finally vent their anger and slaughter these godless Tang dynasty soldiers. Aya! As they listened to the screams and saw the soldiers of the Tang dynasty fall into pools of blood, the Arab scimitars stabbing through their chests and sending their corpses to the ground, they all felt an extreme joy. This is the battle we want. Henceforth, all of the East will bear the banner of our Arab people. An Arab general had a savage expression on his face as he stepped on the body of a Tang dynasty soldier and swung his scimitar across the Tang dynasty soldier's neck. As he watched the blood spurt into the air, the Arab general's eyes shone with excitement and cruelty. But this Arab general, immersed in slaughter, had no idea that while he was reveling in killing that Tang dynasty soldier, his actions had completely infuriated the distant Wang Chong. Damn it! You're all seeking your own deaths. Wang Chong clenched his fists, his mind bursting with rage. Mazel had taken advantage of his battle with Abu Muslim to secretly control the Reaper and the other behemoth to attack the Tang dynasty army. and the other Arab soldiers had also taken advantage of the chaos to plunder. Whether it was Mazel or these Arabs, Wang Chong was seething with killing intent. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.